Okay, not cooperating here. Here we go. Okay, my computer's not cooperating. Not a surprise. Okay, that should be playing, but I can't hear it because I don't have earphones in. So let me see if I can get some earphones working here. Maybe I'll be able to hear that, although I wouldn't guarantee it. It's not been playing nicely. No, not working. All right, well, I hope the music's playing. Hope you hear that. Anyway, let's see if anybody joins the stream here. It's just me at the moment, so another Stray Voltage impromptu live stream. This one's by request, listening in on Germ Warfare's channel, and folks asked me to go live. So I thought I would, just to see how that goes. Now let me see what's going on my channel, if I've actually even got anybody in yet. All right. Okay, very slow here. What's the deal? Right, live. This says I'm live, so let's see if it's actually true. Right, okay, go to that video. And do we have a feed? Oh, got 3 people up there now. Okay, good. All right. Okay, so it does appear to be going well. Hey, Dean, can you hear me? My microphone gives me the impression that it's working. If you can hear me, please say yes, you can hear, or something like that. So welcome aboard, Dean. Anybody else there? 3 viewers, and Dean's the only one who's chatted thus far. Anyway, as I said, this is an impromptu Stray Voltage live stream, something I've been doing now for a couple of weeks just to talk about random topics off the cuff. And since I was on the stream with Germ Warfare, and also Ronaldo popped on there, and this guy Hugo Kruger, who lives in France, some folks suggested, oh great, Dean, fantastic. I've switched over to my blue microphone. It's that pricey $100 one here that I purchased, I haven't been using. Salutations, the thing of nouns, Just a Ghost, there you go. Just a Ghost and Paulie 7. If anybody shows up, I'd expect, Martin, you're there too. Goeiedag. All right, Fernand, how are you all, Fernand, in South Africa? Are you doing well? I hope everyone's doing quite well. Well, I thought that since a few folks new are joining who haven't been part of the Stray Voltage streams previously, I'll tell you a little bit about my channel, a little bit about myself. But of course, that runs a risk of a little bit of shameless self-promotion. That's not the intent, but rather to inform. And yes, I do have the Father Christmas look going on. It's a combination of being relieved of not having to cut my hair short every day for 40 years and deciding that until COVID-19 was over, I was going to grow the Father Christmas beard. It is becoming a bit much here, though. I think for those who are in the with Ronaldo in Germ Warfare stream, yeah, it does make me look a lot older than I actually am. And without it, I look younger than I am. So it's quite a transformation. I went from looking like I'm 35 to like 75 just by growing this beard and the long hair. But we'll change that sometime soon and get back to what would be the norm for me. So let me put something on here for you. So this is a photograph of me in my dress blues. This is at the graduation ceremony last year at the U.S. Army War College here in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So for those, let's hear new subscriber. Yeah, well, we got Dean as a new subscriber, and the Thing of Nouns, I think, is a new subscriber as well. I think there's a few others on here. But welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in on a Monday evening in Silver Fox, yeah. A Monday evening in South Africa and a late Monday afternoon here in the East Coast of the United States. Still mid-afternoon on the West Coast. I don't think I have too many subscribers from the West Coast. Mostly here on the East Coast, in Europe, and in South Africa, and Botswana as well. But anyway, so for those who aren't familiar with me, my name is Chris Wyatt. I'm a retired U.S. Army colonel with 36 and a half years of service in the Army. That includes 34 of that as an active duty soldier. I was enlisted during the Cold War. I graduated high school at 17, went to university for a year. Didn't really apply myself, enjoyed myself, but didn't apply myself. Towards the end of that first year, I realized that I wasn't making good use of my time and other people's money, so I decided to join the Army, get some more money for university, get some experience, grow up a little bit, and then come back. So I joined the Army. I was a soldier in the Signal Corps, and I served in Germany after my initial training, and that's where I did all my time before I got out of the Army after 3.5 years and went back to university to finish my studies and become a commissioned officer. I became an intelligence officer in the U.S. Army, 1989, and then I just retired on October 1st of 2019. Unbroken period of service there. And during that time, I served 3 tours in Germany, in Bad Kreuznach, Germany, in Gelnhausen, Hanau, and finally in Stuttgart at the U.S. Africa Command as a lieutenant colonel. And then I also served a tour in Vicenza, Italy, where I was the counterintelligence commander at the installation there. And then in Africa, I've served tours in Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Niger, Mauritania, Uganda, and Ethiopia. Yeah, that's it. That's 8 countries I did tours. I worked in U.S. embassies as either an attaché or a security cooperation officer across the continent, with the last assignment being at the U.S. mission to the African Union, where I was the senior military advisor to the U.S. ambassador and the U.S. AFRICOM liaison to the African Union. So quite a bit. And then I also worked at the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency. Hey, Jesse Lopez, welcome aboard. The National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency. I taught at Iowa State University as a young officer, as a captain, and lots of experience in many different fields. As an intelligence officer, I did tactical intelligence, strategic intelligence, operational level intelligence, and counterintelligence, signals intelligence. All of those, I was a law enforcement official as a counterintelligence agent. So I've done all those things as well. I'm sure the Chinese are probably gathering all this information right now, but don't worry, they already have it. They've broken into our systems here, and they know information on all of the people who have clearances in America. So, in addition to that, I've done a lot of work in Africa in those places where I was stationed, and in development, peacekeeping, security sector reform, building schools and clinics, running HIV programs, Ebola research programs, tuberculosis, malaria programs, schools, clinics, things, lots of different things. Professional military education, counter-terrorism, yeah, lots of different things. Dean, I did not work for the CIA. I've worked with the CIA, but I've never worked for the CIA. I worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is not nearly as impressive as the CIA or the NSA, which is even more impressive. Dean says, did you get a decent retirement package for serving? Actually, yes. I profited from the generosity of members of Congress who, from 2001 until present, have been sending us off to Iraq and Afghanistan, and most of them have never served in uniform, and so they want to do something to assuage their guilt. So they're perpetually increasing the benefits that military get in some respects. It used to be that the maximum amount you could get in retirement was capped at 30 years. You get 2.5% for every year after 20, and at 30 you're capped out. So even if you serve beyond 30 years, which was a small number of people, you wouldn't get any more money. But they changed that about a decade ago, and as a consequence, I get a larger retirement package now. So yeah, I do fine in my retirement package. I'm not going to be sitting on the corner eating cat food or starving as a consequence of COVID-19. But I would have done well anyway, because I grew up in abject poverty for part of my youth, and I didn't like it. So I learned at a young age to start saving, investing, and planning for tomorrow. So just for savings and investments, although it's not looking good with the COVID-19 and the stock market and things like that, but I won't be starving. So thank you for that. But I have a generous retirement package, and also I qualify for some disability from the Veterans Administration based on service-related things. So I'm doing fine in that respect. So what I've been doing since I came back, I was in Japan for the Rugby World Cup. It's my 3rd consecutive Men's World Cup and my 6th World Cup, something like that. So I went to 2011 in New Zealand, 2015 in England, 2017 for the women in Ireland, and 2018 in San Francisco for the Sevens World Cup, and then Japan for 2019 for the World Cup. So I was there for the World Cup. I was there 30 days in Japan. I went to 17 games. I was supposed to go to 18, but the typhoon wiped out my last game. Typhoon Hagibis cost me a game. That would have been my personal best of 18 games from World Cups. But for those of you who don't know it, the BBC did a news story on me and my travels. You can look up BBC Rugby and Wyatt, W-Y-A-T-T, and you'll find the article. It's still posted online. It's a pretty good article. I am biased. It's about me, but it's interesting. I didn't realize how many rugby games I've been to at the World Cups, cumulative, until I actually saw that story online. It was pretty cool. It was nice of them to do it, but you can still find the story. Type in Google BBC Rugby Wyatt, and you'll find it. But anyway, so I retired from active duty, and then my plan was to start looking for employment by February and March, as I went through my Veterans Administration medical evaluations and things like that. And I'd always intended to start my own consultancy, which I did, and actually started booking business. And then COVID-19 hit. And so COVID-19 has cost me some money. I've lost some contracts and things that I was supposed to be doing in April and May. But that's life. My situation is far better than most people on the planet, so I'm not complaining about that. I'm more concerned about the welfare of others, particularly those who live in in poverty or find themselves in circumstances that they can't do anything about, and living from week to week or day to day under normal circumstances under COVID-19 and the lockdowns, particularly South Africa's draconian lockdown, makes it very difficult for people to survive. So that's where my concern is for the moment. I'll survive COVID-19. I just hope that we all do. So let's see, what else? Are there any classified missions you worked on that you have been no, Dean, I have worked on classified things, but there's nothing that I've worked on that has been declassified since then. I will say that I can tell you about this, is that when I worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency, this was after the 9/11 Commission had determined that it seemed pretty silly that only the CIA was providing intelligence to the President of the United States. And so they decided that that what should happen is that all the intelligence agencies, at the time we had 19 intelligence agencies in the federal government, and that all of them should be providing intelligence to the president on a regular basis. This was during Bush's time. And so I was at Defense Intelligence Agency at an apropos moment in time in which they were eager to become part of that process, the PDB process, the Presidential Daily Brief. You've probably heard about that, if you remember, after 9/11, because it was a big topic. So I wound up becoming a PDB author, and one of the articles that I wrote for the president kept at least 640,000 people from going hungry or potentially starving to death in southern Africa. That's kind of cool. So I can go to my grave knowing that at least I did at least one positive contribution to humanity and made an impact on people's lives, people who will never know that I had an impact on it. So anyway, kind of cool. So yeah, but I can't talk about some of the other things I did. So I'm not implying that I'm some super secret squirrel spy. That's not what I'm trying to get across. But of course, when you serve in uniform, you work in sensitive things at times, and you can't talk about those. The Silver Fox look. Is there any? Oh, the beardless Chris. No, you're really undercover with the hair and beard. I already recognize you. Yeah, Boca. Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Here we go. Boca. Those who know anything about me know that I am a die-hard Springbok fan and have been since 1984, and have only grown more so, although I was a distressed Springbok fan under Alistair Coetzee's reign as the head of the Springboks. I was a huge fan of Henneke Meyer, and I'm a massive fan of Rassie Erasmus, and I even like Peter de Villiers, but I don't dislike Alistair, but he was a Stormers and Western Province coach, and I'm a huge Stormers and Western Province fan, even though I have a Durban shirt on here from Ushaka, those familiar with it. I'm a huge fan of the Stormers and Western Province. And normally for my videos, I wear a rugby jersey, but for the stray voltage, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just going to wear a shirt. I save my rugby jerseys for my prepared videos at this point. And those who watch my streams know that on every video, I'm wearing a different rugby jersey. Lots of them from South Africa, teams in South Africa, and the Springboks, but also from other places, also the Blitzboks. But I have plenty of rugby jerseys from around the world, so I'll tend to wear one of those. This is kind of my trademark thing for right now. Let's see. So what else we got over here? What's your take on the Vela incident? The Vela incident? Did I miss something? What was the Vela incident? Please help me out there. Why are you so pro-Africa and more specifically Southern Africa? Dean, that's a good question. Okay, so let me answer that question. But before that, just like Ronaldo and his Steri Stumpies, I don't get any compensation for this, and I'm not a fan of coffee. Actually, I think coffee is an evil substance invented by Satan to enslave mankind. That's my tagline. I made it up. I have never trademarked it, but I've been saying that for about 35 years. I don't really care for coffee, but I have drank it over the years, most recently because you have to. Otherwise, you don't build a rapport with the people you're trying to interact with. And as an intelligence person, that doesn't work very well. So I started drinking cappuccinos, or not cappuccinos. What's the little, I can't think of the Italians, the little short ones, the strong ones. I had espresso. I had espresso when I was in Italy because I dealt with Italian intelligence and security officials, and you had to break the ice. And if you didn't drink it, they looked at you funny and they wouldn't talk to you. True story. Anyway, so while I'm not a fan of coffee, I do love sugar, and I do love chocolate flavored things. So for those who watch my videos, you'll know that I do drink these Starbucks Frappuccinos. Big fan of those. So I'll tell the story in just a second here, Dean, to explain to you why Africa and what interest I have in it and how I got there. So if you look at the photograph that should be on the screen now, that's me with hardly any gray hair. And that is not even a decade ago. Yeah, that's me in Niger, in Niamey. And I was being interviewed on television in French. So I was being interviewed and answering in French. And that was me when I was security cooperation chief at our embassy in Niamey, Niger. And at that time, I was there helping set up the programs. Some of you may be familiar with, we had special forces soldiers that were killed fighting against terrorists in Niger that program was something I didn't start it, but I was helping get it going when I was there. The reason I went there is to open that security cooperation office up. That was the first person I established it and got it going, and then I left and did the same thing in Mauritania after that. But this was an interview on French language television for Niger. So that's what I was doing. Hey, Gentle Inflatables, welcome aboard. Variable Vision, there you go. Okay, so back to Dean's question. So why Africa? All right. When I was a kid, I would read U.S. News and World Report, Time and Newsweek in the library, and it was the time in the 70s when the liberation movements were taking place, and you had the conflict in Rhodesia, which I found fascinating. They used to have these detailed maps that were in the magazine, and I really liked maps. I was into geography and history and military things. So I followed that, and then I also followed Angola and Mozambique. I read a few books about what happened in Angola, got very interested in Jonas Savimbi. And then late in my high school years, a book came out from an American author who wrote historical fiction named James Michener. And that, by the way, I have this bad habit of getting cut off. So if we get cut off, folks, I'll apologize ahead of time. I've rebooted my router. I've rebooted my computer. So hopefully we won't get cut off. But if we do get cut off, I'll come back on. Please just try to find me again on the channel. Just go back, reload my channel, and you'll find the current live stream. But that's just in case, because I'm up to a number of viewers here. I don't want to just lose people. Bronwyn, welcome. So let me finish this story and I'll get to these other stories. So I read this book called The Covenant by James Michener, and it's historical fiction. And if you've ever read anything from Michener, he wrote these, he was a World War II veteran, wrote very long historical fiction books, thick paperbacks like this thick. And so I read The Covenant. It was this fascinating story about South Africa, and it went throughout the history of South Africa before there were even people there, with the continental shifts and the plates and tectonics, which is what he was wont to do in his books. But actually, after about 100 pages, it gets very fascinating because people come into the story. But I read this and I was like, wow, what a crazy, screwed up place this South Africa is. And that really sparked my interest in South Africa. That started it, and then I had a broader interest in Southern Africa because of the frontline states and because of the black nationalism coming south and coming towards South Africa and what South Africans doing. Later, in an effort to better understand the National Party and the Afrikaner mindset and the mythology of Afrikaner history. I don't say that in a derisive way. Everyone has a mythology, and some of it's true, some of it's actually myth. But to understand that better, I started self-teaching myself Afrikaans. But that was after I became a Springboks fan. Went to a rugby game in 1982 as a freshman at university, and an upperclassman invited me to come to the game. And I said, the game's tomorrow. He said, no, not football, American football, but rugby. I said, hey, I'm from Appalachia. We're just happy to have roads and electricity. True story. And so I went to the game, and I stood on the side of the pitch. I'm like, whoa, wow, this is fascinating. I have no idea what the rules are, but really cool game. So I kind of fell in love with rugby. But of course, we had no professional rugby, and we had no national team even in the States at that point. Even though we had a storied rugby history in the United States, we didn't have a national team. So we were really behind in the rugby 8 ball at that stage in the early 1980s. So I couldn't follow it. But then I'm a historian, so I started looking around to see who the great rugby teams were in history, and I saw that the All Blacks were quite good. And while I love New Zealand, I didn't really care for the All Blacks, but I did like South Africa, and I was interested. And so I became a Springbok fan. That was in 84. After having been introduced to rugby in 82, it was difficult to follow the Springboks for a long time, but I became a rugby fan and a Springbok fan. And then in 85, I got a hold of a few textbooks to self-teach myself Afrikaans because I'd already started learning German. And if you speak German and you speak English, because Afrikaans roots in Dutch, you can get a long way in Afrikaans. Now, I may not be able to pronounce Afrikaans, and so the sentence I probably say the best in Afrikaans is because I can follow along, but I get lost sometimes with the pronunciation, is "Ik praat nie Afrikaans nie." And that's usually the sentence that I have to rely on the most. And then people go, what do you mean? You just spoke it. Of course you speak Afrikaans. Anyway, so I started teaching myself Afrikaans. And of course, the first question I got was, what, are you a racist? And so those who've heard this story before, I'd explain to people, what do you mean by that? Well, that's the language of oppression. That's the language of apartheid. That's the language of all the racists. Okay, well, first off, not true. First off, the majority of people actually speak Afrikaans as a first language aren't even white. They're not Afrikaners or Boers. They're actually mixed race coloreds in South Africa. And I said, second, and they're actually 2 to 1, 2 of them for every white Afrikaans speaker in South Africa, first language. I said, the second thing is that if you want to understand a people, you need to learn their language. It really makes a difference in understanding them. And this comes back to like German, where in German you don't insult someone by using the F word, an F-bomb or something like that. If you want to insult a German, you call them a donkey. Du alte Esel. Yeah, that's a fighting phrase. If you call someone an old donkey, you're going to get in serious fisticuffs. So just an example to give you why it's important, if you can, to learn a language. And so I started learning Afrikaans to get a better understanding about why the National Party was doing what it was doing and what was happening in South Africa. And I think arguably it gave me much more insight into what was happening in South Africa. So there's 20 folks viewing right now. Thank you all for coming aboard on this impromptu live stream. I hope you find it informative and you enjoy it. So let me continue with that story. So that was how I got into Afrikaans, learning about Afrikaans, but I didn't have a lot of time to dedicate to. I should mention I speak 6 languages. Afrikaans is one of them, but I don't speak it particularly well. I certainly understand it, can read it, and follow it. But I speak the 6 to varying degrees, a few of them proficiently, fluently. Actually, for German, I'm frequently mistaken to being German. Depending where I'm at in Germany, because apparently I picked up colloquialisms from places where I was stationed in Germany. I didn't even realize it just because it was second nature to me. But people in other parts of Germany recognize, aha, you're from Frankfurt or you're from Hanau. So I went back to university after getting out of the Army in 1987, went into the reserve component, served in the National Guard. And then while I was at university, I also studied history again and German, a dual major. And then what I did was I focused my history classes on Africa and in Southern Africa in particular. It was a fascinating time. Apartheid was coming to a head. Namibia was about to become independent. There was a lot happening at the time. And so Angola had been was a big deal. The culmination of events in Angola, the Bush War and against the Cubans and such was happening in 1987, 88. So fascinating time from that standpoint for a political scientist and a historian. And I just followed, really got into it and focused my studies. While I was at university, I knew from my military experience that I wanted to be a foreign area officer, a regional specialist for Africa, because I was deeply interested in Africa. And I knew that that was a place where I could probably have an impact, even as a junior officer, say as a major, mid-grade officer, rather than waiting to become a colonel or a general. I could actually have an influence. So I wanted to do that for Africa, and I wanted a language. Well, I didn't want to learn Arabic. I'm not going to go to that part of the world. I don't really care for that. Little did I know I'd spend plenty of time in that part of the world. So I didn't want to learn French because I thought the French were rude and full of themselves and didn't interest me. And now I'm just telling you how I felt at the time. Let's say that's how the French are. I was a young man. It was a long time ago. And then finally, Ohio University had a Swahili program. And so I signed up for the Swahili in my senior year to fill some hours in my academic schedule, but also to get another language, one for Africa. But I arrived a week late, and it was a total immersion class because I signed up late. So here I am in a total immersion class at Ohio University. I walk in, and people are speaking Swahili. People have only been in class five more sessions than I have because it was 5 days a week, which is unusual for a language, but this was an immersion class. And so they sit down, and someone next to me says, "Gina Lango ni Tony." I'm like, okay, whatever that means. But it was total immersion. The instructor didn't speak a word in English the whole class. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? But I caught on, and I took a whole year of intensive Swahili. Then the summertime, when I was waiting to return to active duty, I applied for going back in the military. And at the time, it wasn't clear I'd be able to go back in because the Cold War was coming to an end. The military was being reduced in size significantly. And getting back on active duty was a huge challenge. You had to perform very well at university, had a good grade point average, great performance as a cadet. And I had all that, fortunately. So I was able to get back on active duty, but I couldn't come on in June, which was my preferred time, which was right after graduation. I asked for January or June, and they gave me September. So, of course, right in the middle, not the time I wanted. So that's why I retired in October this past year, because I came back in September and went 30 years from the date plus a few days. So what happened was just a ghost. This is great having a bunch of new people in here. It's really cool. So we got some great questions. I'll get back to the thread here in a second, but let me finish the story because it was asked. So I came back in, and I was an intelligence officer, tactical level, went to Germany, and then went to the Gulf conflict, Gulf War. Came back from there, was a battalion intelligence officer, then a brigade intelligence officer. Did that for 5 years, which is an extremely long period of time, but 4 different jobs in 2 different units. Anyway, so that was a fascinating time. A lot was happening. We had Somalia, Rwanda taking place at that time, and the Balkans falling apart. And then I went back and went to school. Anyway, so that's kind of where I was at. But at the 5-year point, you get designated for a specialty, an additional specialty. So as an intelligence officer, usually you can't go anywhere else because we're critically short. But some people are allowed to go. Based on my performance, I was allowed to become a foreign area officer for Africa. And that meant I was designated. I didn't actually do it until I'd been qualified at the company grade level as a commander. And once I was qualified to get promoted to major, which included being a commander successfully, then I could go on to that. And so after I was a commander in Italy, I went to language school in Monterey for the Army and learned French. I went 6 months, 6 hours a day learning French. Very intensive. And so then from there, I went to Tunisia and then started my career in Africa and the national intelligence agencies, things like that. So that's kind of how I got into Africa. It all started with an interest, but really a book, inspired by a book, The Covenant by James Michener. And if anyone ever gets a chance to read it, you should read it. So let me go back and see what else. Okay, so I think I answered Dean's question, which was from a while ago. Yeah, no kids. Unfortunately, never had any kids, Peter. Yeah. So respect nuclear bomb test by South Africa, Israel. Well, South Africa did have a nuclear weapon, and the supposition is that they did explode that nuclear weapon in the Indian Ocean or off the South Atlantic, actually, back in the 1980s. But South Africa did have a nuclear program, and they're the only country in the world that's voluntarily dismantled their nuclear program. So kudos to the National Party for not using those weapons and to the ANC for getting rid of them. Let's see what else. I'm not sure. This is from Variable Vision. I'm not sure coffee is from the devil. It keeps me from murdering people anymore. Well, so what I mean by the Variable Vision is that the people who are addicted to caffeine and don't get their coffee in the morning, that's what I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about, and some of you might be out there. Some of you might be listening. The folks that are very difficult to deal with until they have that caffeine in the morning, have that coffee, and that's what I mean by an evil substance invented by Satan to enslave mankind. Yeah, it's just a bit of a joke, but. Let's see what else. Bronwyn, your opinion, Bronwyn Mason asks, your opinion on the immigration to get into the U.S. Been trying to immigrate to the U.S. for 6 years. An opinion or what I know about it. I can do both. Having worked in embassies, I do know a little bit about the immigration system, but I'm not a subject matter expert on it. What I can tell you is that knowing about an embassy doesn't really help you because we have no authority. We have no influence over the immigration officers that work in the consulates. There are a few exceptions. Ambassadors can make a few recommendations, but that's for visas to enter the country. It's rarely for someone immigrating there. So getting into the U.S., the thing is that our system is complicated and it's a challenge. And we're trying now to move to a merit-based system. And frankly, I'm okay with that. I prefer a merit-based system. Instead of taking the talented people from around the world, we take the uneducated, the illiterate, the disease-bearing folks. Now, please, folks, don't freak out. I'm not anti-immigration here. This is a country of immigrants, built by immigrants. What I'm getting at is that Canada and other countries only take in people who meet certain criteria so that their country becomes stronger. And we take in the world's poor, and we bear the burden of carrying a lot of those folks. That doesn't mean immigrants don't contribute to society, but if we change the way we deal with immigration, we would profit much more from it as a country. Just a view. But yeah, my view on it, it is difficult to immigrate to the United States for a number of reasons, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot easier than it is for me to immigrate to, say, Australia or New Zealand. Boy, those people are difficult. Unless you're an illegal Chinese and you want to go to Auckland or you want to go to Melbourne, it's hard to get into those countries. If you're a Commonwealth member, not so difficult. So you guys from South Africa have an easier time immigrating to New Zealand and Australia. It's still not easy, but easier than I do. Very difficult for me to immigrate to New Zealand. I love New Zealand. I'd be happy to have a house there and live there part of the year, but it is a very difficult place to go to. For such a small country, they're kind of cheeky. No, just kidding. The only thing I don't like about New Zealand is the All Blacks. I do not like them. Do not like them. So for those who know me, that's a true statement. I respect them, but I do not like them. EduTube. So one of your favorite authors, James Michener. Awesome. So great books by James Michener. The Covenant. Hawaii is a great one. Caravans, I think, is another one's really good. People Like Space and Poland. Those are good. But Chesapeake is one of my favorite books. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and that's the Chesapeake Bay. And that book is really, really good by Michener. I really enjoyed it. So he was a fantastic author. Truly enjoyed it. So how many languages can you speak? Not fluent, but able to hold small. Okay, so Dean, I can speak 6 languages. So the 6 languages are English. I count that one. I had to learn it. English, German, French, Afrikaans, Setswana, and Kiswahili. Jina langu ni Chris, mimi anaka Disberg. Yeah, so that's Kiswahili. I used to actually be fluent in Swahili, but for 20 years I never used it. The only time I used it in a 20-year period was a Kenyan vendor trying to sell me some knickknacks when I was stationed in Germany. And he spoke, obviously, Swahili, so we had a conversation in Swahili, and I was digging in the back of my mind to remember my vocabulary. But anyway, Swahili is a wonderful language. It's like English in that it's very flexible, and it easily incorporates words from other languages. So you have a lot of words in Swahili. For instance, the word for Swahili for school comes from German. And that's because the first people to ever write down the Swahili language were actually German missionaries in Tanganyika in East Africa. And they wrote down the language and gave it an alphabet, used the Roman alphabet. But the good news is that since the Germans did it, and German is a phonetic language, Swahili is a phonetic language, unlike English, which was corrupted by French. Yes, it was corrupted by French, and my ancestors were Normans too, so we were responsible for it as well. But English is corrupted by French, and so we have letters we don't always pronounce, and it gets confusing for people. We also have the English spellings for words like color, and then American spelling, which is not the same, but you pronounce it the same. But yeah, so what happens is in Swahili, because Germans were the first to write the language down, the word for school, because they introduced schools for Africans, was in German it's Schul. In Swahili it's Schule, same word. So bicycles were first introduced by the Brits in East Africa, and so the word for Swahili for bicycle is bicycale. There you go. The word for table, because the first people to introduce tables, they were traders who arrived on the east coast of Africa, and they set their tables up to put their wares on there to trade with local Africans, the Swahili-speaking peoples, were the Portuguese. And the word is mesa, which is coming from Portuguese. And the list goes on and on like that. So it's interesting that the Swahili very easily incorporates these loan words as English has done throughout its history. But Swahili is a fun language to learn. So let's see what else. Yeah, so 6 languages. Let's see what else. Loving all the new people. Jessica said that earlier. Dean says, all the badges on your uniform, does every single one need to be earned? And for an example, what would you earn a badge? How many badges did you earn over your career? Which one's that? Okay. All right. So in that photograph, those are ribbons, and some of them are campaign ribbons. Some of them are for merit, and some of them for various other things you achieved. There's a few that are basically kind of like participation ones. One of them is the Army Service Ribbon, and you get that for having participated during not even having been in the campaign necessarily, but during a specific combat campaign or conflict. And so I have an Army Service Ribbon, which has like 3 stars on it, or three oak leaf clusters because of the Gulf War, the war on terrorism, and then I forget the other one I got it for, so something like that. And then I have the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, which is from a joint assignment from multi-service. I have like 6 of those from different assignments and achievements. The Army Army Meritorious Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal, Army Commendation, all those things. The thing about awards is that awards have an awful lot to do with who your boss is. Honestly, that sounds like a bitter. I like the fact that 2 things happened in my Army career. Number one, in today's Army, if you make Lieutenant Colonel, that's considered a successful career because it's difficult to get above that because of limited positions. In a larger Army, it was easier. So it's considered, but it's always been considered a mark of success if you made Lieutenant Colonel. But the real mark of success, you really made it. You arrived on the scene as you became a colonel because that's a senior officer position, a full colonel. And so that was really a mark. So I became a full colonel, and in the interest of full disclosure, as an Africa specialist, there are no general officer positions, so I could never become a general as an Africanist. I was an intelligence officer. We have plenty of general officers there, and I was competitive in that career field. But I wanted to work Africa. I wanted to make an impact in Africa. For me, I wasn't in it to become a general. If that happened, great. But it was more important for me to work Africa. So I made the transition from the intelligence corps to the foreign area officer corps. Well, it wasn't really corps, foreign area officer branch, so that I could do work in Africa, knowing that I would never make general officer. Honestly, at that time, when I did that, it was very difficult to even make lieutenant colonel and almost impossible to make full colonel. But the Army changed the way it managed officers, and it wasn't simple, but still very challenging. But nonetheless, if you have great performance, you can advance. So I had good performance, and I advanced to full colonel. But the thing I like about making full colonel is that I can complain and I can point out shortcomings in the Army evaluation system and how we select leaders. And no one can go, well, you're just grumpy because you didn't make lieutenant colonel or you didn't become a colonel. It's just bitterness. You just angry. No, I made it. I got as high as it was even possible to go. So I can speak and make these comments, and no one can accuse me of having sour grapes. And it's the same thing with awards. I've got a chest full of awards. You can see there. That's not a boast. that's not, and that's old. That's a decade old. That right there, almost a decade old. That photo. Well, let's say that's from 2013. 7 years old, I should say. So I got plenty of awards throughout my career. But my experience has been in uniform is that if you have a great boss that rewards performance, then you can get rewards. You can sometimes work for people who have no interest and only do it, okay, he's leaving now or she's leaving now, so it's time to give them an end of tour award, and you get those. So I have a mixed bag view on awards. I have always used awards as an incentive to reward people for excellent, outstanding performance, and I have even done it to where I've had to fight others. I had a sergeant who worked for me when I was in Botswana, and he was doing a sergeant first class's job. So he was doing a job of someone that was at least a decade to 15 years more experienced than him, making 2-3 times his salary. He was doing that job in Botswana as just a sergeant, a young sergeant. And I submitted him for an award that's normally given to senior non-commissioned officers like a sergeant first class and up, and majors, lieutenant colonels. It was rejected by the Africa Command. It was the early days of the Africa Command, and I said, no. This NCO, Sergeant Tesfaye, has done remarkable work at the level that should get this award. And take that out of consideration. Consider the fact that the guy is not even at that level. He doesn't have experience yet. Nonetheless, has done an amazing job. And because I was taking care of an NCO, a non-commissioned officer, the senior non-commissioned officer appreciated that, and he looked into it. And when the promotion, or when the awards board met, he overruled some that was being difficult, and we got the award for the soldier. To me, that's what awards are for. Yeah, it's pretty cool to have all those ribbons, and if I actually put all the medals on, I walk around like this, like a Polish war hero or a hero of the Soviet Union, because it's quite a bit. Some mean something to me. Some are for combat, for achievement, things like that. I do not have a Purple Heart. Fortunately, I was never wounded in combat, so that's nice. But a lot of my colleagues do have Purple Hearts. Okay, so let me go back to see what I've missed here. So which one stands out the most for me? Well, I'm really proud of a lot of them, but on the left-hand side of my uniform, you'll see my name badge, and above that, you'll see my regimental affiliation, which is with the Intelligence Corps, and just below that, there's a row of ribbons. One of those is a Valorous Unit Award. The Valorous Unit Award is awarded to a unit. Any soldier that's assigned to that unit, when it's awarded, these are awarded or done by the president during combat or a campaign. When it's awarded to that unit, whoever serves in that unit for the rest of that unit's history, say 30, 40, 50, 100 years later, wears that ribbon while they're assigned to the unit. The soldiers who were part of the unit when the award was earned or granted wear it for the rest of their lives as an individual. So it's a unit level award, but I wear it as an individual. So for me, I was in the 3rd Battalion, 8th Cavalry, in the 2nd Brigade of the 3rd Armored Division in the First Gulf War. We fought against the 52nd Infantry Division, the 10th Infantry Division, the Tawakana Republican Guards Division, and several other divisions which we couldn't even identify. What happened was that after the war, the commander of that division, Major General Funk, Paul Funk, who later became Lieutenant General Paul Funk, well, he didn't change his name, Lieutenant General Funk, at Fort Hood, in charge of the corps that was located, I think it's 3rd Corps at the time. He had submitted our unit for gallantry against the Republican Guard during that conflict, short as it was. About 5 or 6 years after the war, the award was actually granted. I didn't know about it. I was actually at Fort Lewis, Washington as a captain, and there was a sergeant major out there who had been a senior non-commissioned officer in the Gulf War and was assigned to my battalion. And he recognized me, and I'm like, hey, Sergeant Major, you used to be an E7 last time I saw you, Sergeant First Class. He goes, yeah. And you were second lieutenant. I said, yeah, no, I'm a captain. We wound up being on the same team of tactical advisors, or TACs, as we trained cadets. And we were talking one day where we're fighting the red ants out there, not the red ants in South Africa, but the red ants that you find in Washington State and the northwest of the United States, the ones that were imported from Europe to clear out dead animal carcasses. And they're nasty, they bite, they're painful, and these horrible mosquitoes. And so we're sitting there while the cadets were preparing for a patrol they were going to do, giving their warning orders and prepping for it. So we had a few minutes, we're talking. He said, hey, so Captain, did you ever get your Valorous Unit Award? I'm like, Sergeant Major, what are you talking about? He goes, oh, no. Our battalion, 3rd 3A Cav, we got a Valorous Unit Award. I'm like, I never heard about that. He goes, yeah, you should check into it when you get back. So I looked, I went and found the Army Heraldry and looked up the awards and found the citation. And then from that date on, I was able to put on my uniform. But it wasn't until about 6 years after the war was over that I found out that we had gotten this award. So that one I'm kind of proud of because my unit, we lost no soldiers in combat as a casualty of combat during that Gulf War. Yes, it was brief, it was short, but my job, I was one of the intelligence officers, and my job was to make sure that people knew what the threat was, what the danger from the Iraqi forces were, how they would attack us. And you have to understand that the Army didn't train me for that, or any intelligence officer. We didn't learn about the Iraqi threat. We went to intelligence school, we learned about what the Soviet Union and North Korea were going to do. So we had to adapt and learn very quickly about the Iraqis before we went into combat. And I would argue that part of the reason we didn't lose anybody is because our commanders and soldiers and officers were fully informed about what the threat was. And quite frankly, usually when we encountered the enemy did what I and my boss predicted. And as a consequence, we outgunned them. Now, we had superior equipment, superior training, and great numbers. That's all true. But even with that, you can still lose people. So I'm kind of proud of that Valorous Unit Award. All right, so let's see what else here. Dean, what would you have to do to earn the badges? Well, it depends. Now you get some bosses that get carried away. So when I was in Hanau, I was a Brigade S2. It was a major's job, and I was a lieutenant, first lieutenant. I was doing a job 2 grades above mine, and my boss, who was a full colonel, kept getting these people coming to him interviewing for the job of Brigade S2, which is the job I was filling. I thought I was just filling temporarily. And he kept coming. Eventually, the G2, the division intelligence officer, so you got brigade, then division is higher, called him, and he's a lieutenant colonel on the general staff in charge of intelligence for the division as a whole. And he called my brigade commander, who outranked him as a colonel, and said, "Sir, I keep sending candidates over to you to interview to be your S2. Are they not up to standard? Are you unhappy with them?" And my boss said, "No, I've got the best S2 in the division. You don't need to send me any candidates." He goes, "Yeah, but you just got a lieutenant." He goes, "Yeah, and he's the best." Now, he told me this after when I left the assignment. I didn't know this at the time. My head probably would have swollen, but the point, it was pretty cool. So I worked for him. Now, the reason I mention that guy is that he was a great boss to work for. He was a former rugby player at West Point, huge guy, Stephen Cook, one of my favorite bosses in the world for a lot of reasons. But he was also very generous with awards. So one of the awards I got was because I set up a program with the German police chief from Hanau, who was a close talker. He's one of these guys who got right up in your face like this, and he had halitosis. He's passed away, so I'm not speaking out of turn here, but or out of school. But he was a fantastic guy, and because I spoke German fluently, my boss had me go talk to him to set up a sports badge program so that we could get soldiers to qualify for the German sports badge, which is not a military award; it's a civilian award. But you can, if you're enlisted in the U.S. Army, have it added to your records and wear it on your uniform, the sports badge. So I set it up, and it's not a simple thing to get. I mean, you got to do all these events, and some of them are quite challenging. And so I set that all up, and we ran something like 1,200 soldiers through the program who qualified for the badge, including myself. I got it. And anyway, so my boss gave me an award for that. And that's perfectly acceptable, but I don't want to say I'm proud or embarrassed by it, but it was like, wow. But he was very generous, and I got a lot of awards during that tour. But I've got a lot of awards throughout the course of my career. So let's see what else. Variable Vision says, have you ever read The Communization of the ANC by Gerald Ludi? No, I haven't. So I don't have an opinion on it. Sorry. I am reading this one right now from Crispin Over, and this is How to Steal a City. This is about the ANC and what it was doing in Nelson Mandela Bay in the run-up to when Danny Jordan was appointed the mayor. And then, of course, the ANC famously lost in the 2016 municipal elections, with the DA getting 45% of the vote, but not enough for a majority. Consequently, had to go into a coalition government, which was fractious. And I'm sure that Ronaldo knows a lot about that because he was around when this was going on. But this book, it's not the best read, but it is very informative. And it's shocking to see ANC members tell the truth. Now, this is an interesting book, and it's quite scary. So anyway, How to Steal a City, The Battle for Nelson Mandela Bay, an Inside Account. I'm not familiar with that other book, though. Let's see. Isn't sugar almost the same as sugar in the sense of addiction level? Well, sure. No, sugar's not addictive, Ice. It's bad for your teeth. It's bad for a lot of parts of your body, but to my knowledge, it's not addictive. Funny thing about sugar and soft drinks and caffeine, all that, is that I can go without. Oh, lost some viewers. I must have got boring there. Sorry about that. I can go without those things for a while. There's times when I'll drink not now, but historically I drink 12 cans of Coke in a day. Well, that's a lot of sugar and that's a lot of caffeine. And then after a couple months, I'm like, Coca-Cola, I'm done with that. And I wouldn't drink any soft drinks for 2 or 3 months just because I didn't find it appealing. Same with Frappuccinos. These are great, but at some point I get tired of them. And especially the ones you go to the actual Starbucks and get the big ones they're blended together. They're huge, 650 calories with the whipped cream. Fantastic. I get tired of those eventually, and I just stop for a while and don't do it. So, yeah, I'm not sure that sugar is addictive. I can do without it. So certainly not addicted to me. But, the thing about caffeine, too, is that I'm kind of inured to caffeine. I can drink this, which is full of caffeine, lie down at night and go to sleep in 5 or 10 minutes after that. It doesn't really affect me in that way. Now, it might make me a little, excitable, but I'm kind of excitable on my own. I don't really need sugar or caffeine for that. So let's see what else. I worked at the 2 plants. This is from Dietrich Bucha. Welcome aboard, Dietrich. I worked at the 2 plants in Pentibla and Vandella in the 1990s. Which plants? Sugar plants? Jessica says, I don't need coffee in the morning, but if I went wild the night before, give me gallons. Peter says, what state in the U.S. would you suggest? What, to immigrate to? or to visit. Okay, looks like I'm way behind here. Sorry about that. What state? Where's it at? Sorry, the stream is getting away from me here. Peter said, what state in the U.S. would you suggest? Is the question to immigrate to or visit? I'll come back to that, because let me get to some of these other comments rather than wait for that response. Give you a second to do it. So Bronwyn says, can't go to Australia, New Zealand because my son is autistic and epileptic. Sorry about that, Bronwyn. Canada won't accept us because my husband is over 45. Yeah, that's nonsense, right? Spent 4 months in California 2 years ago. Wonderful place. Yeah, well, to my knowledge, we don't have those constraints. We're taking people in their 70s and 80s who immigrate to America. So I'm not sure. I take it, Brunwyn, that you've had enough of the crime and the nonsense and all the other things that have coalesced to make South Africa a very challenging place to survive and live in these days. That must be why you're interested in immigrating. Great that if you want to come to America, happy to have you. We like hardworking, honest, diligent immigrants. Country has been built off of the contributions of folks like that. Let's see. So Justigo says, and sorry about your son. That's a challenge for you. I know that's both autistic and epileptic. That's a tough one. I'm sure he's a wonderful child, though. Yeah, I'm sure he's a wonderful child, and you love him dearly. So, Brew, U.S., what's your Skype? Okay, so I'll share it here. I'm not going to type it in because I can't type in this thing, but my Skype is my email. It's the same. I use it for a lot of things. WMW Chris. So I'll spell that phonetically because I was in the Army. Whiskey Mike, Whiskey, Charlie, Hotel, Romeo, India, Sierra. So it's my initials, William Martin Wyatt, and the name I go by, Chris. And that's a question in of itself. I'll only tell the story if people ask about it. Otherwise, I won't explain to you why I go by Chris, because it's not my name. It's not my middle name. It's not a nickname. It is my name, though, but it's not my legal name. Now, why am I called Chris? Variable Vision says, well done, congratulations. I assume you're talking about the awards and my service. Thank you very kindly. I appreciate that. Peter says, Bromwyn, I know of a family of 4 that went through Mexico to get to the U.S. Seems risky, but they got through with refugee status and also had a sponsor in the U.S. Yeah, okay. Bronwyn, welcome you as an immigrant. Peter, I'm not going to recommend that. That is subterfuge, and that is one of the problems we have with our southern border, and it's one of the reasons why Donald Trump was elected, is people subverting our immigration system. Our immigration system may not be ideal, but that's not a valid excuse for people to subvert it. One of the reasons why I have changing demographics in this country is not because the endemic population of America is not reproducing. We are. We are reproducing at a replacement rate, just above that, even with 1 million abortions per year in this country. Sad, isn't it? We still have a replacement level. People say our population is declining. It's simply not true. If we didn't have 1 million abortions, we'd have a surplus of population. And so they're claiming we need immigration for our population to grow or stay steady. Simply not a true statement. Let's see what else. Okay, let's see. The brewer wants to ask me a few questions. Okay, got it. Jesse, hey, Chris, what's your thoughts on the SANDF deployment here in SA? Well, okay, so that's a good question there, Jesse. So you're talking specifically about the SANDF's augmentation of SAPs for the lockdown is what I presume. So let me talk about that. Okay, so first off, for those who are old enough to remember the SADF being deployed to the townships in the 1980s, and perhaps in the 70s too, but 80s, we don't be too old here. But this has to be a bitter pill to see the Army running around in fatigues, carrying rifles, riding around in Caspers and Rattels or Buffaloes, whatever it is they're riding around in now, and enforcing effectively a police state control over people's behavior. Got to be very disturbing for folks. And that's something that a lot of black South Africans had seen and were accustomed to seeing in the townships back in the 1970s and 80s. A lot of white South Africans probably hadn't seen it so much. Them, it might be something new for many of them to see, but not all. Many South Africans served in uniform and did it. Now, I'm not saying that the military is bad or evil. What I'm saying is that, the military being deployed to augment the police is not something you see in Western Europe or the United States, except on rare occasions, truly rare occasions. Even here now, we're not using the military. The National Guard is being used in medical facilities and some places like that, but the active military is not engaging in law enforcement roles. That's what SANDF is doing. It's doing law enforcement. It's maintaining public order. That's a very slippery slope. I'm not a fan of it. That doesn't mean I disagree. The SANDF can be used for that purpose, but I am not convinced that they were properly briefed, prepared, trained to do the mission. And having seen the conduct of some soldiers and the SAPs, I worry greatly about what the the SANDF is doing. And also worry about an incident. We had a situation here in New York City yesterday where it spread like virus on social media, in which someone was arrested in a bodega. Apparently in the newspaper report after the fact, we couldn't see because it's just someone on a cell phone video, several cell phone videos. So you only get, of course, people hold the phone up like this. So you only get, that angle. You don't, be nice if they do this for us, but most people don't think they do it like this. And so the video shows the cops, a black police officer dragging someone out. The cop's not wearing a mask. Okay, first off, that's wrong. It's New York City. It's the epicenter, ground zero of this thing. Should be wearing a mask. He drags someone out of a bodega, throws him to the ground. Some lippy black woman jumps in, runs her mouth, and approaches the police from one side, which escalates the situation. Fortunately, nothing came out of that. And then I don't know what happened. We couldn't see it because it was off camera, but someone who's in the street, a good 15 meters away from the cop, must have said something. One of the cops jumps up, who's in civilian clothes, no mask on, turns around, menacingly turns towards the person, says, step back. And of course, we can't see the person in the camera, and we can see at least a good 4 or 5 meters of distance here, and we don't see anyone. So he's not in reach of touching the cop. Cop walks with a taser, and you hear him clicking it, threatening the guy. Back it up. Don't front me. And then we see the camera turn, and the person's still a good 3 to 4 meters away after the cop has advanced toward the person. This person is standing in the street at the corner of the sidewalk. The cop comes up and is still menacing with the pushing the button on the taser, and so you can hear the electric charge. And then as he gets up to the corner, he tells the guy again, "Don't front me." And you can see the guy stand up like this, upright. He doesn't lunge at the cop, but the cop grabs him, punches him in the ear, throws him to the ground, beats him, kicks him. Another cop comes over. They put on the plastic restraints, and the whole thing is out of control. The guy's laying on the ground. He never resisted when he was thrown to the ground. You can see that. Didn't even kick, just laid on the ground, and the cop beat him. And this is a concern. Now, I have empathy for the police. This is not an ideal situation, and the behavior of that woman especially was not helpful. This gentleman, though, from my perspective, I can see what he did. My concern is that you don't train the military to deal with these situations. Now, having served in the National Guard in the United States, I was involved in the training we did for that sort of thing. What we did was we were trained as National Guardsmen on riot control and civil and public order. It's one of the things the National Guard does because it's part of their mission set as a reserve component. The National Guard in America works for the active military when they're federalized, but the rest of the time they work for the governor. So the governor can call them out for a response or for civil disorder and has great latitude in how they're employed. So part of my training in the National Guard is we were taken to a prison. And we did training at a prison in using nightsticks, shields, batons, all that stuff, how you move, how you interact, how you de-escalate a situation, how you protect each other. And the SANDF has not gotten that training, I guarantee it. And as a consequence, we're going to see problems. And so I have grave concerns about the use of SANDF in this role without training. And they've just put them out on the streets. I seriously doubt, I don't know for a fact, but I seriously doubt that they've had any training since then. You should be rotating units through to give them a break so they refresh. You can't just keep putting tired troops out there because their stress level increases, their awareness decreases, and their actions could be a problem at a time. So you've got to rotate them out. When they rotate out, part of that should be refresh, refit, and retrain. Train them properly in what they're supposed to do. Anyway, that's kind of my view on the SANDF in this, and I think that might do the trick to answer your question there, Jesse. If I didn't answer, Jesse, ask again. ICE says, sorry, I mean sugar, addictable coffee. Some people have such a tough time cutting sugar. Yeah, well, I guess maybe it is addictive. I don't know, but you're right. Some people do, but it's the taste. People, they crave that taste. Maybe that is an addiction. But for me, I can just get off of sugar altogether at times. I love sugar. I'm not obese. I'm not overweight. I'm 55 years old now, and I have a good blood sugar, good heart rate. So I'm doing okay. But a lot of it has to do with lifestyle and exercise. So let's see. Please tell us why you're called Chris. Okay, so EduTube asked the question. Poor question structure for immigration. Oh, Peter, I think I answered the question, Peter, for immigration. And so the question was poorly structured. So for immigration, I think I answered it now. If I didn't, ask it again. It's more specifically. So Variable Vision says, EduTube says, please tell us why you're called Chris. Okay, so I'll tell you, at the risk of losing people following the stream, I'll tell you the full story. Now, mind you, I was being born. So I'm relaying this to you secondhand from parents and from uncles and aunts who told me the story after the fact. So here you go. All right, so when I was born, I was the first child in our family that was born in a hospital. I was born at Bon Secours Hospital, or in French, Bon Secours, which means good rest, good recovery. in Baltimore, Maryland. I was the first child in the family born in a hospital. I have cousins who are older than me, but they were born in houses and that sort of thing. I was born in 1964. I know the beard makes me look that old, but anyway, see the photograph? I don't look nearly that old there. That looks like a 27-year-old guy, doesn't it? No, anyway. But so I was born in the hospital, and when they went to the hospital, my father and my maternal grandfather apparently didn't get along. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that my father was 30 and my mother was 19 when I was born. So I think that had something to do with what was going on. But they didn't get along. So my grandfather was there, whom I barely knew my entire life. But he was there. Grandfather, his name was Golden, Thomas Leo Golden. So my grandfather was there, and my father was at the hospital. And I was born at 6:25 or 6:30 in the morning, something like that. And they were discussing what to name the child. Of course, there's no ultrasounds. You don't know if it's a boy or girl. You know, this is the dark ages. We barely have electricity. Remember this. So what happened was they had an argument, and my grandfather and my father were talking about, what are you going to name the child? My father's name is William Grimes Wyatt, and Grimes comes from his mother's maiden name. She was Beatrice Grimes. So there was a family tradition. It's an old English thing where you take usually the firstborn, but my father wasn't the firstborn. He was the thirdborn. I was the firstborn, but he was the thirdborn. But usually the firstborn gets the mother's maiden name as a middle name. So my father was William Grimes White. And my grandfather said, well, what are you talking about? You're not going to name the kid William. This child's name is Chris. If it's a boy, it's Chris with a C. If it's a girl, it's Chris with a K, K-R-I-S. And so they argued about this. My father said, no, I'm going to name the child William. And my grandfather says, you can't do that. You have to name the child Chris. Now, you're probably wondering why my grandfather said, why Chris? Well, the secret to the story is that my birth date was the 25th of December. So I was born on Christmas Day. And my grandfather thought it was appropriate to name me after Christ in celebration of Christmas Day, to call me Chris. So my father ran off and filled out the certificate of live birth, and he put down William Martin Wyatt. Don't know where Martin came from. There's nobody named Martin in the family. It's no middle name. My mother's maiden name is Golden, so it should have been that. It should have been William Golden Wyatt. But my father filled it out and called me William Martin Wyatt, and that was the legal name I had. It's actually a little bit different than that, but I won't go into that. But William Martin Wyatt. And then my grandfather named me Chris, and that stuck. And so if you know me as Chris. If you call me Will or Willie or Bill or Billy, then I actually don't even hear that. You know, I hear people, so Bill, William, it just goes right over my head. I've been called a lot of things, and some of them derogatory, but I've never gone by that name. So if you call me those names, I don't answer. Anyway, so there you have it. It's also very handy so that when a solicitor or an insurance agent or someone trying to sell you a bill of goods calls you up, so hey, Bill, you know, if we talked, you don't call me Bill. You know better. Because trust me, that's a story that no one forgets. When you tell them your name is Chris and your business card says William M. or William Martin Wyatt, but your name is Chris. So anyway, so that's kind of the story behind Chris. I hope that was interesting. A lot of people do find it interesting. But it's just funny. So until the age of 45 or 46, I never had a conversation with a single person. Now, obviously, millions of people are born. It's another day on the counter. But I never had a single conversation. Now we're losing people. Is it late or am I getting boring? I never had a single conversation with anyone in my life who said, hey, my birthday's Christmas Day too. Christmas Eve, December 26th, but never. It wasn't until I was 46 and I was in a conversation, somebody said, yeah, my birthday is Christmas Day too, first time ever, which is odd because lots of people are born on that day, so nothing special about it on the calendar-wise. But anyway, so that's where it came from. Moving to another country as an adult can't be fun. No, it's not. So, Rudy, I have moved about 30 times in my adult life. And as a child, I moved even more than that. I lived in 34 of the lower 48 states before the age of 17, and I think I attended 36 elementary and junior high schools. Fortunately, I went to just one high school, which was good for continuity. But so being in the military just was not unusual for me at all. But in the military, I moved something like 26 times and lived in all those different countries. It's not easy. It's easier with the military because they pay for it, and you don't have to pay for it. But it's very disruptive. Things get damaged. Things get lost. Just uprooting all the time. Redoing accounts, new electricity, new cable, new telephone, new mailing address, all that stuff. It gets to be quite a bit. So it takes a lot, moving around a lot. So but it's an experience that not a lot of people have. Certainly not that many times in your lifetime. Anyway, but it is a challenge. So let's see. Jesse says, thanks, Jesse. I think I must have answered your question, and you are very welcome. It's my pleasure. C'est un plaisir. For me, President Trump is the biggest troll, but that's why I like him. Yeah, Trump loves to troll people. It's hilarious. And they take it so seriously, you know. It's the whole thing like, Kofefe, Trump can't spell. You ever heard of a typo at 3 a.m.? I got plenty of typos. Relax, people. Yeah, Trump just loves that game. That's who he is. He's also a bully, but whatever. Um, you get what you get. So Rudy Roo, the reality is this: you put on a uniform, you get given certain powers, and a lethal weapon can warp some people. Well, that's true, Rudy. I'm not sure where that comment's coming from, but yeah, some people get. Oh, maybe you're talking about the SANDF in South Africa. Absolutely true. And that's why being in uniform, being a soldier, or being a police officer is such a sacred duty and responsibility. You have other people's lives in your hands, and you can have an outsized influence over the lives of other people's that can be tragic in an instant. And so it is a sacred responsibility to be professionally trained, to have the discipline, to know how to react to things like that. I had somebody stop me a few weeks ago on the street, just stopped, whipped their car up, was looking for someone else, accused me of doing something that was actually someone else. And I could have argued back, and instead of arguing, I just de-escalated the situation so the person could get out of the car and start something. And I was just calm, and I brought up another subject, which diverted the conversation, and the person calmed down and left. But yeah, you have to train law enforcement. You have to train the military to deal with those situations. There's a time for lethal force. There's a time for force. But it's not the first resort. And those who resort to it first do so because they're poorly trained, or they have poor impulse control and shouldn't be in uniform to begin with, or because they're scared. That's another reason why people miss. And so, particularly in this time now, this is critically important for the military and the police to behave themselves. And it's a challenge. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. Jessica says no, but there have been a lot of South African. Okay, Peter says, which state in the U.S. would you recommend for immigration or vacation? Well, okay, that's a good question, but here's the thing about that. So, okay, obviously I'm biased. I'm an American, but you should think that I am actually not entirely biased. I'm objective because I've been all over the world, and there's lots of places I truly enjoy going to, and I would recommend for vacation, many over the U.S. at times. But if you're going to come to the U.S., it is such a big country. It is so huge. There's so many things to do, so many natural places to visit, so many wonderful cities to visit, so many experiences to have. If you like country music, you want to go to Nashville, or Austin, Texas. If you like beaches, you want to go to Florida or the Carolinas or California. If you like mountains, the Rocky Mountains are amazing. The Grand Canyon is a site worth seeing. The Badlands in South Dakota, Mount Rushmore. The list goes on and on and on. Crater Lake in Oregon. We have so many natural things that are just amazing to see. Even as an American, you can't see all of it in your lifetime. So it depends on what you want to see. So in order for me to answer that question, Peter, I'd have to know more what your interests are. For me personally, I like forest and I love mountains. And so for me, New England in the fall, when the trees change colors and you get the beautiful golden and red hues on the leaves, is absolutely stunning. Now, not every year is as good as the previous year, but when we have good rainfall, you get lots of colors in the trees. It's absolutely stunning. Just driving your car around, get a hire, driving around, stop in little inns and lodges, go to restaurants, see the scenery. And there's other things to do up there. There's historical places, Revolutionary War battle sites, beautiful, quaint New England towns. There's also many, many different things to do. Shopping, lots of things to do, cultural things to do. And if you do that, you could drive up to Quebec if you want. It's not that far away. Say you're in upstate New York, not that far away. You can knock out Quebec, which is interesting to do too. So that's mountains. You can also go the Appalachian Mountains. If you like to hike, if you've got time, you can start in Georgia and walk all the way up the country along the Appalachian Mountains on the Appalachian Trail to Maine, to the Canadian border. In fact, the Appalachian Trail is only about 7 kilometers from my house. I walk on it frequently. It's not as attractive here because the hills are pretty small, but it still is the Appalachian Trail. I've done it in North Carolina. It's stunning in North Carolina. If you want to come for sports, we have amazing sports, and that includes professional rugby now, although everything's on hiatus right now. So it just depends what you want to do in America. If you want the big city experience, you got to go to New York. If you want to learn or see great museums, DC is fantastic for that. The Smithsonian Institution is an amazing museum with lots of fantastic things to see. It really just depends what you want to do. I can tell you that the Grand Canyon is a site you'll never forget if you get out to California or to Arizona and see the Grand Canyon. And if you go to the Grand Canyon, you're close enough to Las Vegas, you got to go to Vegas. If you go to Vegas and you have time, you might as well go to LA. Not a fan of LA, but Southern California is quite beautiful too. If you can put up with the leftists and communists, and now the endless streams and hordes of homeless people populating the streets of Los Angeles. If you can put up with that, then that's quite an experience. Washington State's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And if you go to Washington State, you're close enough to go to Vancouver. Vancouver's a lot of fun. Victoria on Vancouver Island is also beautiful. So lots to see out there. Devil's Tower in Wyoming. I could go on and on forever. Niagara Falls. These are all places I've been to in my lifetime. I've been all over the country. I've been to virtually every state, except for North Dakota. I don't think, have I been to North Dakota? I think I've been all but North Dakota. Maybe I've been there. But there's a lot to see and do. As far as immigrating, it all depends on where you are in life. If you're 55 or 60 and you're looking at retirement, a lot of people like Florida. I'll never live in Florida. I can't take a state seriously where the highest piece of elevation is a landfill. There are no hills. It's just a piece of flat. It's the bit of sand that didn't get filled up because the oceans didn't rise high enough to flood it. Otherwise, there would be no Florida. I can't take it seriously. I have to have hills and valleys and streams and forests and mountains and things like that for me to take it seriously. So anyway, you see the picture here on my stream in the background. That's the Mahalisburg in Northwest Province, just to the west of Rustenburg. I truly love mountains. To me, that's more like a hill, not really a mountain, but nonetheless, that is a mountain in the Mahalisburg. So for immigration, it depends on what you're doing. If you're a young person who's in the IT sector, then you want to go to Boston or Silicon Valley in California, or Utah. Salt Lake is another place for the IT industry. If you are in the financial sector, New York, Boston are places to go. There's lots of opportunity. So it just depends what you want to do. But the thing about America and Americans is we tend to be mobile. While a lot of Americans never move around, a lot of Americans do. They move around at least 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a lifetime because of employment and or schooling, things like that, which is very different than Europeans. Europeans are largely set in their ways and rarely move from their home village and hometowns to some other place. That has changed in the last 2 or 3 decades, but historically that's been the case. I know that when I was in Germany, my first tour in the early 1980s, one of the biggest complaints from German businesses like Siemens and Krupp and BMW, companies like that, was they were frustrated and upset that they couldn't get their executives who were very talented to leave Munich or Bremen or somewhere to go to another factory location where they needed them to work. They wouldn't go because their family was located in the village in Bavaria or Rhineland-Pfalz, wherever that, and they just refused to move. Now, that's changed in Germany, too, but that was a problem for a long time ago. But Americans, we've always looked to the West. We've always, had the horizon, always expanding, always full of ambition and big thoughts, big skies, and always trying to spread out our wings. So Americans are more accustomed to moving. In addition, a lot of people have come here as immigrants, and immigrants have already picked up and moved, so they're accustomed to doing that and relocating. So what else we got here? Dean says, my grandfather's name is Michael. My dad's second name is Michael. My second name is my dad's first. Okay, now you just confused me there. I need a Frappuccino. Starbucks. Interest of full disclosure, I am a shareholder in my retirement account of Starbucks, and it's done quite well. Bought it when it was like $7 a share. It's $85 a share now. All right, so I'm a little bit behind here. Okay, so Just a Ghost, Colorado Mountains, beautiful, and the lady I spent, Just a Ghost, that's a personal situation. We won't inquire about the lady you spent it with, but the mountains of Colorado are fantastic. Most recently, I've been out there just last summer. I was in Aspen. That Aspen, the ski resort where all the truly wealthy people go to and play in the snow. I was out there for the American Renewable Energy Day where I spoke about the energy sector in Africa. I was a guest speaker at this event. That was pretty cool. Enjoyed it. I drove a rental car out there, but unfortunately there's so many people traveling through the mountains that the highway coming back, I pretty much sat in a traffic jam for hours. I was supposed to go to the Colorado Rockies baseball game, and it took me so long to get back. It only took me a few hours to get out to Aspen, but coming back was a disaster. Traffic was backed up hours and hours. I got into Denver, and I got to the Rockies game in the 8th inning. But it went in extra innings, so I actually got to watch about 4 innings of baseball before it ended. And little did I know that there was a concert after that. This Christian musician who's huge, I can't think of her name right now. She was quite good, actually. I don't really usually listen to Christian music as a thing to go to. But she was really good, and I got a free concert out of it, too. So it was pretty cool. Then I flew back the next day. I also went out there the previous year to speak at the Energy in Africa conference, in which I talked about China and the energy sector in Africa in Denver, and I went to a Colorado Avalanche game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. I hate the Penguins, and I love the Avalanche, so it was really cool. But it's beautiful out there. Really enjoyed it. Went to the Coors Brewery. Went to Kit Carson's burial site in the Rocky Mountains. Also amazing. Really cool stuff. And I'm a big fan of Wyoming, which is just north of there. So when you get to Denver, if you get a chance to go out to Wyoming, it's quite nice too. Wyoming is a huge state. Let's see. Peter says, So I'm sorry. Variable Vision says, I'd go to LA to meet the rooftop Koreans. Ice says, so true, Grand Canyon is a must-see. No words, one has to. Yeah, exactly. It's now, it can't compare to the Valley Marineris on Mars, but until until Elon Musk perfects the Falcon rocket system or whatever rocket he's got from SpaceX, and he gets us to Mars, we're not going to be able to see the Valley Marineris up close in person. So you got to see the Grand Canyon. But yeah, excuse me. So many national parks between Vegas and LA. It's amazing. Yep. Peter says, it sounds amazing. If you hike in South Africa, you get hijacked. New England and New Hampshire areas look beautiful. Las Vegas is a must visit. Agree with all that. Yeah, you got to be careful in South Africa. Even up in the Drakensberg, it can be very dangerous. Absolutely true. I remember, so I'll tell a little story here, see if you guys are interested in this. But when I was in Durban, this is 20 years ago, and I stayed in a Holiday Inn. Of course, South Africans, Holiday Inns are upscale hotels in South Africa. But in America at the time, we didn't have the Holiday Inn Express. We just had Holiday Inn. And it was a brand that kind of fallen on rough times. Back in the 50s and 60s, Holiday Inn was the roadside hotel. It was the place to go. Never really a luxury hotel, just kind of a overnight thing. So Americans, and you tell them you stayed in a Holiday Inn, they're like, oh God. No, but the Holiday Inns, especially in Durban, fantastic world-class hotels. So I stayed in a Holiday Inn, one of like 6 that are on the beach there. And I was hungry. I wanted to go out and get something to eat. So I walked downstairs. It was late afternoon. And the person at the desk said because they knew who I was, I checked in. They said, so Mr. White, are you all set in your room? Was it fine? I said, yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you. I'm just going to go out and get something to eat. He goes, sir, you can't go out there. I said, what are you talking about? Well, you can't go out there. He said, sir, you're white. I said, excuse me? Oh, yeah, thanks for that news flash. I did realize I was white, but what do you mean? He said, no, it's not safe. It's very dangerous. We have a lot of crime out there. People get mugged all the time. I'm like, well, that's kind of depressing. This is your high-end tourism spot right here on the beach, and you got people getting mugged. He goes, it's just a reality, sir. I'm just trying to warn you. I said, well, I'm in the Army. I think I'll be able to take care of myself. I kind of keep my spidey sense about me. I'm always twitching when I see something odd, so I think I'll be okay. He had a look of trepidation on his face. I walked outside. I walked down along the boardwalk there in front of the beach. I'm not a beach person. Looking for something to eat. And the options didn't please me. I was like, not very good. Remember, this 20 years ago. So I went back to the hotel, and I went in. They have a restaurant downstairs, an Indian restaurant. I only had Indian a couple times, not really had a proper Indian meal in my life, because there aren't a lot of places back then in the U.S. where you could get proper Indian. Now you can get proper Indian food in America, but you couldn't back then in many places, especially in small towns. So I walked in, and the restaurant was down there. And I sat down. It was late afternoon. It's probably about 5:30. And so no one else in the restaurant. And the guy says, so have you eaten Indian before? I said, well, just a few times. I said, it'll be okay. I like spicy food. I'm a big Mexican food fan. He goes, no. It's not the same. He said, I said, what do you recommend? He said, well, I would recommend the chicken madras. But you might want to get like a 3 or 4. I said, on a scale of 10? He goes, yes, on a scale of 10. I said, well, that's pretty low. He goes, trust me, it's the right amount. I said, well, I'll tell you, why don't you just bring me a 7? And he looked at me like this, 7. I said, yeah, I can handle it. So he brought me out the chicken madras. It was wonderful cuts of chicken meat, no fat, all white meat, breast meat. Excellent. So I'm eating my chicken madras, and he comes by a little bit later on. And he says, are you okay, sir? And I have tears coming out of my eyes. My nose is running, and I'm like, it's one of the best meals I've had my entire life. It's amazing. It's so good. Thank you. Anyway, so it's my Durban story. I've got others, but that was an interesting experience. So anyway, like I said, not a fan of beaches, so you don't need to go out there and worry about the shark fences to keep the sharks out. So anyway, but yeah, so that's kind of like a hijacking story. Now in Botswana, the first time I went to Botswana, and then every time I've gone there, there's a hill, Khali Hill, which KGLE is spelled Khali Hill, which is right next to the big shopping center where Game City is located at. South Africans know what Game is. It's a big shopping mall. That's the anchor store in the mall for years. And just behind it is this big hill called Khali Hill. And a lot of people like to drive up the hill because there's a road to get to the top. You have a stunning view of Gaborone and into South Africa towards Madikwe and such. It's just amazing. I've never been up it because the Americans are forbidden from going up there. The embassy doesn't allow us to go up there because people get mugged all the time. And in fact, my colleague went there, and he didn't listen to the advice. He was working at the embassy in Botswana, and he went up there, and they went out and took some pictures, and they came back, and then the window was broken out of the vehicle, and everything that had been in the vehicle had been stolen. So anyway, yeah, so getting hijacked, carjacked, or robbed is an all too frequent and common occurrence in South Africa, and this is one of the problems that the ANC is really complicit in not fixing. Professionalizing SAPs and properly equipping them so they can do proper community policing and actually having more police. South Africa probably should have about 400,000 police officers. That's right, I said about 400,000. Given the level of crime, 178,000 officers and SAPs means that at any given time, you never have more than 35 to 40,000 police officers patrolling on a beat somewhere, and a lot of them are in cars in South Africa. You can't cover a country that size adequately to respond to crime with that low level of personnel. It's insane. 57 million people, 35,000 cops on the street. Ridiculous. A joke. That's why Sandef is out on the streets right now. That's what's going on. All right, so let's see what else. So Neil Potgeider, yeah, it's Neil. I thought make sure I didn't say Nail. Neil Potgeider says, thought that background looked familiar. Drive past it twice. So you're from up in the Rustenburg area. Yeah, it does look familiar. Here, I'll move my picture out of the way there so you can see a little bit better, and I'll move this one down. You guys can take a peek. Yep, that is a familiar picture. I love that spot, that section of the road from when you come towards Rustenburg from Zeerust. You drive up and you get to the exit for the Royal Bafokeng Stadium on the left-hand side, traveling to the east towards Pretoria and Rustenburg. And this is on your right-hand side. That is just a stunning view. There's like a little camp and lodge a little further up, about 2 kilometers on the right-hand side. I don't know why, but this really evokes lots of emotion to me. I really enjoy that spot. It's really amazing stuff, cool stuff. I like it anyway. So, near Rustenburg Kloof. Yep, absolutely right. Yeah, sorry, Neil. I just got to that now. Nikki Nikki De Beer, excuse me. Welcome, Nikki. You got diamonds, Nikki? Oh, it's not De Beers, it's De Beer. Have you seen that the ANC government will use BE to determine who will receive assistance? Yes, I have, Nikki. And if you subscribe to my channel, if you haven't, please subscribe to it and go look up the videos I've done. I've done an angry video. It's about as angry as I'm going to get. People don't listen if you start screaming and throwing things on videos, but I've complained about this incessantly. I also did a video about the assistance programs when they first were announced, and the minister angrily claimed that those who said that it was based on majority businesses and BEE criterion were spreading fake news. Of course, mind you, they were getting the application that was on the Department of Small Business and Some Enterprises website, so it was a government website. They got the information off of there. It said you had to be 70% majority owned or something like whatever. So it had to be BE compliant. And so basically minority businesses couldn't get the grants. And so people started spreading that on social media, and it came out in the news. And of course, she came on and said, well, that's fake news. Well, excuse me, lady, that fake news came from you. You chuckleheads put that fake news out there. Of course, they were embarrassed by it. And they said, well, this was a working document. Nonsense. Cuck. Bullshit. This was a working document. That was your intent all along. You just were too stupid to realize it was in the document. People saw it, and now you're embarrassed, so you're trying to cover your butt. But then many people suspected, as a consequence of that, what would simply happen is that it's not official. They'll simply discriminate against people behind the scenes. You apply, your application sits there, you never get any grant money. And that, from what I know, is what's been happening. I know a number of South Africans who own businesses who are minority owners, Indian and white South Africans, who've not gotten any money from these funds. They've applied. Others who don't even bother applying because they know that they're going to be discriminated against. That's just the reality. That is pathetic and sad and shameful. And the ANC lacks leadership and truly doesn't care about leading South Africans as a people when it allows that nonsense to happen. So yes, I've seen that. And now again, we've had this with the Tourism Relief Fund. Solidarity and AfriForum both took them to court. They went to the North Gauteng Court, and the North Gauteng Court had the audacity to say that this didn't violate the Constitution. I don't know what Constitution they're reading, but I can read modern standard written English quite well, actually. And I've read the South African Constitution. It's quite long, by the way. And I've read the clauses where it talks about that and about these policies. It is not appropriate to treat people differently. And that's what's happening with these relief funds. Now, the stupid, moronic part about this is that when you deny money to a minority-owned business, do you think you're just hurting the minority-owned business owner? No, you morons. You're hurting the employees and all the people who live and survive from the money those employees earn and the ancillary businesses that supply that, many of which are majority-owned businesses. 2 out of 3 employees that work for minority-owned businesses in the tourism sector in South Africa are black South Africans. So how the hell does denying relief money to those people help black South Africans? It doesn't. Absolute bullshit. I don't use profanity. I use cock a lot because that's cute, but I don't say things like bullshit very often. But it's absolute nonsense. And anybody that supports that needs to check themselves. They need to take a hard look at themselves in the mirror. That's discriminatory, that's race-based, and it's racism. You're saying that one group is better than another. That's classic racism. It's nothing but racism. And it doesn't help South Africa. And it sure doesn't help your reputation. And it will be the reason that this economy sits in the crapper for years because of failed, race-based, get even macroeconomic policies by the African National Congress. Now, if you fade back to 2 years ago and watch a video of me talking about South Africa's fragile democracy, I say complimentary things about the ANC. I think I was overly generous at the time. So I'm not just a ranter and ANC hater. I give respect to ANC for some of the things it did during the liberation struggle, but I also am critical of them for their failings. They don't deserve a free pass. They're a ruling party. They need to put their big boy pants on, step up to the plate, and you are responsible for all. So when Cyril Ramaphosa says, my people, who the hell are your people? Zulu, Xhosa, Ndebele, Pedi, Tswana, the Basotho people? Coloreds, Afrikaners, Indians? Yes, all those are your people, my friend. All those are your people. Not simply the Xhosa, not simply the Zulu. My people. Funny how Cyril Ramaphosa on Freedom Day couldn't be bothered to mention one white South African who contributed to the liberation struggle. Not a single one. Dennis Goldberg, who passed away this week, he did 3 days of mourning for them. Today, the flag came back from half-mast up after 3 days, and he did say kind words about him after the man died. But he couldn't be bothered to mention him as an icon of the liberation struggle on the Freedom Day. Everyone mentioned was the black South African, and even the historical figures like King Ketsheweo and the famous Xhosa kings that he mentioned. Not a single white South African. No Helen Suzman, no Harry Schwartz, no Dennis Goldberg, no Helen Zille, no Andre Brink. Anyway, I'm getting on a rant now, so I'm going to back off that and go back to the questions. All right, so yeah, so Nikki, I think I answered your question. I hope I didn't get too excited there and get carried away. ICE says Yosemite and Sequoia. Oh, yeah, ICE in California. So I was based in Monterey to go to the Defense Language Institute where I learned French. And at the Defense Language Institute, you're not that far away from Yosemite. So I went to Yosemite and I saw the sequoias, which are just below there. It'll blow your mind. El Capitan, an amazing site. The only problem I had with those places is that they're overrun with tourists, kind of like Yellowstone. So many tourists. So you want to go in a shoulder season, like when they first open or as they're getting ready to close and it's turning fall. That way there's less crowds there, and a lot of kids are in school, so you have a lot less kids around, so it's not as congested. But those are amazing places, absolutely amazing places. It started snowing, in spring, amazing. I was in Yellowstone in September and woke up to 3 inches of snow. Yeah, it's at high altitude. That's part of the reason. People always talk about, on the high veld, the rugby is difficult for the All Blacks. It's unfair for them to play at Loftus because it's so high in elevation. It's 2,000 meters, you children. Grow up. That's not high elevation. I lived in Addis Ababa. It's 9,900 feet every day at the American Embassy. You want to talk about high elevation? There's almost no oxygen at that level. And I ran up the mountain even higher, over 10,000 feet every day when I ran. Anyway. Yeah, so the high veld, it's not that big a problem for oxygen. Maybe for those beach dwellers from New Zealand, those All Blacks and their haka, their little dance routine, may be challenging for them because they're not accustomed to the altitude. But they've got mountains. They can acclimate, go to the South Island, camp in the islands, do your training there. Just an idea, All Blacks. Don't listen to me. I don't want you to be better. All right, so will you ever come? Of course I'll come back to SA. I was just there a couple years ago. With the weak currency, when it gets to 40-1, I'll be buying all kinds of property in Western Cape. I'll be the slumlord extraordinaire. That's the plan. No, I'm just kidding. But we'll see. Absolutely. Definitely want to come back to South Africa. Amazing place. Jessica says, I'm not talking about the Denver airport. Oh, Denver airport. Yeah, it's nothing special there. Sean Mandich. Hey, Sean, welcome. You were in Boulder and Portland in 2018. Liked it. Might buy property in Oregon in a few years once I have enough. Yeah, Oregon's beautiful, but Oregon, for me, is very difficult politically. It's a left-leaning state. They have some strange views on things. I've enjoyed my time there. I went to Crater Lake. I've been to Portland. Portland is interesting, but Portland's controlled, the city council is controlled by leftists who try to stop urban development, and so it has one of the most bizarre zoning situations in the country. It's very difficult to build anything there. It's very difficult to buy a house. They're very expensive, not because they're valuable, but because they're valuable because intrinsically they're valuable because of artificial controls put in place, because those who've got theirs in Portland don't want anybody else to get in on the action. So Portland's a weird city, but it's kind of cool. Lots of microbreweries out there, beautiful location. I spent a summer out there at Fort Lewis in just below Seattle, Washington, between Seattle and Tacoma, just below that, where big Army base is at, in the summer of 1996, I think it was. And I was talking about that story earlier about the Valorous Unit Award. So that's where I was at. And I spent about 4 months out there. And so I went to Portland quite a few times on my off days. I was on a schedule where I worked 3 days on and had like 3 days off, 3 or 4 days on, 3 days off. So I went to Portland, I went to Seattle, I traveled all over. So it was quite an interesting time. All right. Laid over here. Have a great evening. Variable Vision, take care. See you again. EduTube, you moved again. Oh, I moved my picture? Okay, population versus crime. Police have a higher population doing crimes than the rest of us. Well, yeah, that's a problem there. Aisha Kennery, the most knowledgeable person on YouTube. Well, I bow before you. Aisha, thank you so kindly. That's very nice of you to say that. So I lean forward. You can see it's my hair. There's no bald spot there. Thank you so kindly. Justigo says, maybe the next Delaray. Gosh, remember the insane reactions of the ANC when Book von Blerk came out with Delaray. And I listened to it and I'm like, huh? What are they upset about? The Kakis aren't black South Africans. The Kakis are the English. They hate the English. If anybody in South Africa should have been upset about Delaray, it should be the English-speaking South Africans who descend from the English who settled there, who tried to take over and eventually did take over the Transvaal and the Orange Free State. Not black South Africans, but no, they interpreted this to be an insurrection against ANC rule and pining for the days of white rule. No, that's not what Delaray was about. That's not what the... Now, true, Delaray was killed by a police officer when he was supposedly going to be involved in a potential insurrection against rule during the First World War. But anyway, Delaray was a great leader of the Boer commandos and had a big impact. And he is a hero for the Afrikaner nation, historically. Yeah, a new Delaray. Well, that would be cool. But Boek van Blerk's song, Delaray, is amazing. Absolutely love it. So I says, you're so right, Chris. They clearly can't read English because the Constitution is very clear. Yeah, the Constitution is very clear. I don't know how but this is the problem. When courts are independent, but they're appointed with people who are not independent, they're beholden to an ideology, you have a problem. So here in America, our Supreme Court justices and our federal judges are appointed to the bench by the president. And they usually have a political view. They're left or right or center or something like that. And they appoint people. And we've historically had a balanced court for much of our history, but not entirely. And the courts, of course, are responsible for adjudicating whether a law is legitimate or if it's in accord with our Constitution and existing law. But in South Africa, you have a Judicial Services Commission, which selects your judges. I don't know if that's a better mechanism. It might be. But I'd like to know who the hell's selecting the judges of the North Gauteng Court. I mean, you don't have to be a trained scholar to read the Constitution, then read this. So their judgment, I don't have the paper in front of me, but I read it the other day in one of my videos. The conclusion of the North Gauteng Court was that the Tourism Relief Fund, by relying on affirmative action, there's no such thing as affirmative action. That's a misnomer. It's like a previously owned car. Used car, hero, not previously owned. So the program that the North Gauteng Court made its judgment on for the Tourism Relief Fund for small enterprises is not being discriminatory because it does not give anyone an unfair advantage. It just gives majority businesses a head start. What? If you give someone a head start, that's an advantage. How? I mean, we don't run Olympic races. You don't line up. You don't put Usain Bolt out there and then everybody else gets to go 10 meters in front of him. The gun goes off and they all run. We see who wins. That's an unfair advantage. That's discriminatory. The fact that Usain Bolt is the fastest guy in the world, too bad for everybody else. Not your time. You have to wait till the guy gets too old and can't run anymore, which is the case now. Someone else can come along. Unless he's doing performance-enhancing drugs, that's a completely separate thing. I don't think he is. But you don't simply change the rules, kind of like the government lowering the matrix standards to just 40% in South Africa. What is that all about? Do you want the structural engineer who got a 46 on his maths to be the person that builds the bridge that you have to drive over every day? I don't. I'm just saying. I'd rather prefer that the South African government deliver proper education so that that person gets a matrix score of 96 on their maths instead of a 46 and is actually qualified to go to university and get an education and build those bridges and roads. But yeah, anyway, the North Gauteng Court, I don't get this. I'm a layperson. I'm not a jurist. I'm not a lawyer. But it doesn't seem to me to take rocket science to realize that they're speaking out of their ass. Oops, more profanity. When they're speaking out of their butt, when they're saying that it doesn't discriminate against people, it just gives an advantage, a head start. That's what it is. Anyway, the Constitutional Court, hopefully, I understand Solidarity and Alfred Forum are going to appeal to the Constitutional Court. Hopefully those judges are independent and not beholden to some ridiculous ideology and will judge in favor of forcing the state to provide money. But we're talking about a very small amount of money. 50,000 Rand is the max you can get from that particular fund. And most tourism businesses that I'm aware of, that's a small amount of money. $2,732 is not going to last you very long. That's not even one night of bookings at a high-end lodge. So it will help some people. But anyway, yeah, I'm familiar with it and not happy about it. So let's see. Nikki says another development is that no nonprofit organization may hand out food parcels, only the government. Yeah, what is that all about? If they want to make the argument that, but I know why they're doing this, and I'll explain to you why they're doing it from my perspective. If they want to make the argument that it's unsafe for churches and civic groups to give out food parcels to the needy because you're coming in contact, I could buy that argument to a degree. But there are safety measures you can take to ensure that it doesn't become a problem. But the real reason is because the government wants to be the only people giving out food. So when they go to the polls in 2021 to vote, they'll remember that the ANC is the one that gave them food, that kept them alive. Never mind, the food's not coming from the ANC, it's coming from private citizens who care about other South Africans. Oftentimes, private citizens who are not the same ethnicity or even the same skin color as the recipients of the food. But we don't want that inconvenient truth to come out. We'd much rather paint South Africa as a racist society in which white people hate black people, and the only reason black people are suffering is because white monopoly capital and because they're all racist. Anyway, Starbucks break. Anyway, let's see. Where was I at? It is unacceptable, Nick. Nikki. Just to go says yes. EduTube says we need a Delare. Well, you just need leadership. You need people that want to lead the country for all South Africans and not for their personal political ambitions, egos, or their own select groups. That's what you need. And getting someone like that's going to be very hard. The problem is that all the fossils in the ANC need to die off. And Cyril Ramaphosa, because of his role as a lead negotiator for the ANC as a trade unionist at the CODESA summit, that was the basis of his political power and his entry and influence in the ANC. So he's much younger than all the other fossils. And they're all dying off now. And we're not going to see Ramaphosa die off because he's not that old. So, but he has the same mindset as the fossils that have been around since the 60s. Right. So Ice says he agrees. If it's quiet in Yosemite, it's amazing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You get to Yosemite, there's nobody there. Crisp morning, say in the fall with a little bit of frost, and the air is cold. Beautiful. Amazing. Can't really put the experience into words. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Portland has a very strange thing going on with their government and with the Antifa movement there. I'd visit, but don't think that's a place I'd ever go to live. Yeah, I enjoy Portland as a visit, but I'd find it hard to live there. It's just difficult politically for me. Edu says, good morning, Chris. I'm off to sleep. Almost time for morning coffee. Yeah, take care, Edu. Thanks for joining. I appreciate joining the chat. I hope you enjoyed it. It is midnight in Southern Africa, so I hope I'm not boring folks. Jessica says, sir, you know you're being logical, and that's why you don't understand the ANC. Oh, I understand the ANC, Jessica. I'm just trying to be balanced in my response. If I really spoke the true words I feel here, some people might be shocked. I'm incredibly disappointed. The ANC has turned out to be just another liberation party that doesn't know how to govern and has decided that it's our turn to eat. And they'll use any tool at their disposal to perpetuate their rule so that their cadres can keep digging into the pockets of South Africans. Now, that's a harsh judgment, and it's not fair. There's a lot of legitimate people in the ANC, but the problem is that the country's not being ruled by those legitimate people. It's being ruled by people who don't care. I mean, look at the nonsense that goes on with these ministers who say one thing and the truth is something completely different. Absolutely nonsense. So Sean says, the agenda that is being pushed by the South African public government is so obvious. I'm done with politics. Yeah, well, the problem with that, Sean, is that in 2021, South Africans need to go to the polls, and they need to vote based on performance, not on identity. You got to stop. Now, I'm talking about all South Africans. So you got to stop voting on identity. You'll have people that will always vote on identity regardless of what happens, not based on service delivery and based on performance. So the ANC has a track record, and they can keep blaming apartheid, which bears responsibility for some of the woes of South Africa, but they've been in government for 26 years in an unassailable position. In fact, all but one election cycle, they've had two-thirds majority to amend the Constitution at will. They are not constrained by opposition parties. They are not constrained by the press. They are not constrained by anything. So they could do things that are in positive favor for South Africa. They simply choose not to do it. Now, that said, the ANC has done a lot of positive things, particularly in the first decade of its rule for the country. But at this stage, it seems to be it's our turn to eat, and we're going to get what we can, regardless of what happens. And the shameful race baiting and racial discrimination that's happening now is really, it's disgusting. I mean, a lot of us were opposed to apartheid because it was morally wrong, and it was inappropriate, it was unfair, it was unjust. And now we're seeing people who are using race-based policies in the same fashion that the National Party did. And the world is not paying attention. It's very frustrating for those who are concerned about the future of South Africa. So Bronwyn says, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. We'll tune in again next time. All right, well, thanks, Bronwyn. You must be gone already, but I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a late stream, but this is kind of an impromptu one, so people asked me to come. So Justigo says, people voting for performance. Yeah, people should vote for performance. But you know what? Voting based on identity is not a South African phenomenon. It is the norm all over the world. So in America, we have essentially 1/3 of the electorate that will always vote Democrat, no matter which buffoon or baboon we put up as a presidential candidate. We can have a candidate who falls asleep when the former presidential candidate endorses him, Joe Biden, and still get support from 1/3 of the population who bothers to vote. On the other side, we can have a guy that can belittle people and say the most outlandish things and embarrass himself repeatedly, but governs pretty well. So I'll be fair to Trump. He can do all those things, and 1/3 of the electorate will always vote for him just because of party affiliation, identity-based, not ethnicity or race, but identity-based on party identification. And then we have the 1/3 in the middle, which is what everybody's fighting for. So you're only fighting for 1/3 of the pie. And I am in the middle, and so they have to convince me to vote one way or the other. Now, the left does a very poor job of convincing me because I don't believe in socialism and I don't believe in communism. I spent a good part of my life fighting against it, and I've seen up close and personal the disastrous impact that socialism and communism have on the psyche of the human being, on initiative, on drive, on entrepreneurialism, and the poverty that they cause. So I'm not a fan of it. So the left has a hard argument to win with me, but the right also has a hard argument. The problem is you got to pick somebody. So there you go. Creepy Joe. Yeah. Peter, this was fun, but I'm writing tests from. Oh, well, Peter, thanks for coming. I'm so sorry that you're here so late. Please get some sleep. Good luck on your test tomorrow. Do well. I'm not sure what test you're writing, but congratulations on whatever the tests are, and hopefully you'll have good results. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. We're starting to lose folks now. It's after midnight in South Africa, but I'll go a bit longer if people would like me to. I haven't really talked about my springbok here. This one's from Botswana, actually. He's a springbok, but I got him in Botswana. So, yeah, Botswana crafts. Born in Africa. 90 pull-up. Anyway, if folks need to go in South Africa, I really appreciate you staying. It's kind of you, but if you've got things to take care of, you've got things that are going on tomorrow, take off, that's fine. I appreciate you tuning in. But I noticed that a lot of people, it's lockdown, and a lot of people can't go anywhere. They're not working still, so days just kind of run together for some folks. So if that's the situation, feel free to stay and we'll chat for a bit longer and see what's going on. Just a Ghost is good. So Just a Ghost, I've got a question for you. Is your avatar, your little circle, is that like the red Chinese flag? It's so tiny I can never tell. It looks like you got a communist flag on there. I was always curious about that. Anyway, so for those who are curious, we got a question here. Ice says, when you use the word buffoon now, it made me think of an Afrikaans word. Have you heard the word? Yes, I have heard it used. Ice. Yes, I have heard it used. It's interesting. Yeah. So where was I going at with that? Oh, yeah. So for those who are curious, I have had a YouTube channel since 2006, and if you go look, you'll see. Well, if you've been on since 2006, how come you have so few followers? And well, I had a video. I'm an early adopter of most things. I'm like Inspector Gadget. I'm really into technology and doing things. Is my screen getting washed out? It looks like it's kind of washed out. I'm kind of an early adopter of things. Accounting. Good luck with that, Peter. Excellent. I'll catch you next time. Oh, wait, look, Just a Ghost. It's Chinese flag with COVID virus. Awesome. So I'm an early adopter of lots of technology. I had Palm Pilots. I used to build computers. I used computers since it was IBM data punch cards, then cassettes for the operating system, then 5 1/4 floppies, and the list goes on and on. So I've always been an early adopter, and I got a YouTube channel in the early days, long before Google owned it. And I only posted one video. That was a video that you'll find on my site, which has about 4,300 views of waterfalls in Iceland, where I visited in 2006. And I couldn't see the utility of it because I was in the intelligence career field, so you can't be advertising, "Hey, I work for intelligence," And then I did a lot of sensitive things for the U.S. government and served as a diplomat. And you really can't have that social media presence as a diplomat. So I didn't really use it for a long time. But my intent was always, once I retired from active service, to create a channel focused on Africa and the U.S. to try to encourage people in the United States to go to Africa, but also to open the eyes of Africans. A lot of Africans think they know about Africa, and my experience is that very few Africans know much about Africa. Some intellectuals, some elites, but most Africans don't know what's going on in the next village. I'm not being derogatory or derisive, but it's a true statement, folks. One of my goals is help share about Africa, to help Africa integrate trade better, and also get American businesses interested in Africa. Now, if I make a little bit of money at some point on that, hey, that's all the better. Money's not a bad thing. But speaking of money, so when it comes to money, I always find it interesting because people get excited about money, and they want to have money for the sake of having money. To me, money has always been about true independence. We can have a constitution that guarantees civil liberties and freedoms, and we can travel, we can right to assembly, right to religion, free speech. But if you don't have any money, how can you exercise those freedoms? How can you enjoy the world if you can't go to New Zealand for the Rugby World Cup? If you can't go to Botswana to go to the Okavango Delta, to Kasane, or to go to the Masai Mara in Tanzania? If you can't see the world, if you can't enjoy things, then what is true freedom? So that's what money's all about for me. That's the only thing, the reason I care about is being responsible, paying my bills, and taking care of friends and family, and also being able to do things. That's true freedom and liberty. So what have I missed while I was chatting away there? 1010 says, when I hold my breath, the Constitutional Court are biased towards Chief Justice Mohang made it very clear previously. Yeah, that's kind of scary. I'm not sure what's going to happen in that Constitutional Court. I do hope that they change that. But the fact that the African Union, SADC, the United Nations are silent on issues like this, I realize they're distracted by other events, but even if they weren't distracted by other events, they wouldn't say anything. When the government of Zimbabwe distorted the argument about land, and Mugabe lied about land, and people murdered farm workers and commercial farmers in Zimbabwe, the United Nations, SADC, wasn't the African Union, it was still the OAU at the time, Organization of African Unity, but became the African Union shortly after that, were absolutely silent, abjectly absent from this debate. And the reason they did that is because the people that were affected were people they felt were people that could be abused because they were oppressors. But here's the problem with that stupidity. Simply claiming somebody's an oppressor based on the skin pigmentation is utter nonsense. First off, for Zimbabwe, between 1980 and 2000, those who listen to me have heard this argument before, but from 1980 to 2000, 42% of all the land that's designated as commercial farmland in Zimbabwe had transferred hands at least one time, some of it multiple times. Now, what does this mean? The government in Zimbabwe from 1980 till 2000 was under Robert Gabriel Mugabe and ZANU, and then ZANU-PF when it merged with ZAPU. They had complete control. No land could be sold unless the government decided the buyer could buy it. So they had first right of refusal on all land in Zimbabwe for 20 years. If 42% of the commercial farmland changed hands and the people who bought it couldn't buy it until Mugabe said they could buy it, then how is it that the land was stolen by settler columns, that the land was defrauded, and that black Africans were cheated out of it? That's a true story, but that doesn't explain the status of the land in 2000. That explains the status of the land in 1980 to some degree, but not in 2000. So in 2000, when Mugabe and his thugs and ZANU-PF lie about land in Zimbabwe, and the world sits by and lets farm workers, hundreds of them, be murdered, political opponents be assassinated, opposition be harassed, an election stolen by ZANU-PF, one of several, and commercial white farmers murdered because they had the temerity, the audacity to back the opposition party, foolishly thinking they lived in a democracy. Yet the world sat by silently. Why? Because the commercial farmers in Zimbabwe were a class of people that much of the world's elites have no issue seeing them abused. My concern is that perhaps that might be happening in South Africa at some stage, and that's a very frightening prospect. So for those who don't know, I will be on Ronaldo Ho's program this Sunday. What is that, April 10th or something like that? 9th or 10th. And with this Sunday, I'll be on Ronaldo Ho's, and I will be talking about expropriation without compensation and the land issue in South Africa, and hopefully shedding some light on this. And even for folks who think they know a little bit about the land issue, I'd like to think I'd be able to shed some light for you as well, talking about this issue. We'll see where it goes. I'm going to be on for at least an hour. Every time we get on there, it seems to go longer. But please tune in on Sunday to Ronaldo's program, and it'll be the evening program. So it should be interesting. And we're going to talk about expropriation without compensation, which is just nonsense. The government of South Africa, before COVID-19, has long had the resources to do land redistribution properly. They just haven't cared about it. Now, they have done land redistribution, and they've done restitution, which is more important in my view than redistribution, restitution. But we'll talk about that more on Sunday, so I don't want to steal my own thunder from that. Oh, by the way, so let me mention this now while I've got a few viewers on here. Here's the deal, folks. So for those who don't know, let me put this picture back up. Just a second here. I've mentioned this previously, so Just a Ghost, I think, and Paulie and a few others know this, but here you go. So this is a screenshot from Facebook. This is Giselle. And for those who don't know, Giselle is a Namibian singer, and she lives in the Pretoria area. She sings in Afrikaans, and she sings in English. She sings country music, but also light pop. She came to my attention a few weeks ago. I was watching Afrikaans music videos, and I came across a song called Suidwes, which is about Namibia, Southwest Africa. And she sings it in Afrikaans. Fantastic cinematography, beautiful scenery of the Namib Desert, the backgrounds, the Skeleton Coast. Gorgeous, really good. And the lyrics are nice, beautiful voice. And I was just amazed. I was like, this is really cool. How come I've never heard of Giselle? The only Giselle I can think of is Boonchen, the one that married that clown from the New England Patriots. Now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady. But anyway, so Giselle, I was like, don't know who she is. So I went and did a Google search, and I came across a Facebook page, and I looked at it, and it had a little link over there on WhatsApp that says you can contact Giselle through WhatsApp. I'm like, okay. So I sent the message, and the contact is run by her manager. And we got in contact. We talked a little bit about, he's like, how do you know about this? You're an American. You listen to Afrikaans music? I said, well, I listen to all kinds of music, but Afrikaans is one of them. And I said, I'm not a big country music fan, but I was intrigued by the video, and it's very, very appealing. So he sent me some of her songs and told me that they were supposed to do an album launch. Her videos from 3 years ago, and they've been writing the songs and producing them, and now they're ready to launch the album. They were going to do a U.S. tour, going to come to New York City, Dallas, and I think somewhere else here in the East Coast or maybe Tennessee, something like that. I'm not sure. But anyway, so they were coming to the States, but the coronavirus put a stop to that. And so they've been holding back. You know, I understand a lot of musicians around the world are actually holding concerts at home in which they sing with a guitar and they're lounge and, just themselves. And kind of lame, and actually some of them even charge for it. But Giselle, her managers decided to launch the album even though they can't do the tour. They're going to do a live online stream this Friday evening. So it'll be 7 p.m. Johannesburg time. So it'll be 1 o'clock, 1300 here on the East Coast of the United States. And her manager contacted me late last week and said, do you mind if we stream Giselle's concert on your channel? I'm like, yeah, I don't mind at all. That's fantastic. So ladies and gentlemen, this Friday, let me check the date. What is that? May, I don't want to mess this up here, so get it right here. So that would be May 8th. Friday, May 8th, here on my channel, Chris Wyatt's Africa channel, you'll be able to listen to the premiere for the album launch of Giselle's music. Now, she sings in English and Afrikaans, so there's something for everybody. Quite good. So kind of exciting stuff. I've discovered that most South Africans have never even heard of her. She's from Namibia, so maybe that's why. But I mean, even the Namibians who speak Afrikaans, usually South Africans know about them. I mean, people know who Juanito du Plessis is. People know who Franyu du Plessis is. Elvis Sassoon. People know those musicians. But she's an up-and-coming artist, and so it should be interesting. And she will be on my channel Friday. And please tune in and share it with your friends who listen to music. If you got country music fans, I'm not one of them. But if you've got country music fans or if you have Afrikaans music fans, let them know. And again, she sings English too. So he sent me some of her other songs, and they're quite good. But I haven't got permission to share them, so I'm not playing them yet. But it should be interesting. So it's just an album debut, free, kostenlos, as we say in German, no charge on my channel. Exciting stuff. I'm kind of excited about it. So Friday, So you won't hear me talking, but you'll be hearing Giselle play. Should be interesting. Now, what he told me, her manager Johan told me that they didn't want to just have her sitting there with a guitar. So they've done a professional production of this. They've built a studio in her house in which it's going to look really professional. That's what I've been promised. So if you're disappointed, you can blame me, but that's kind of the build-up for it. So that's this Friday on my channel, and I'm looking forward to it. But that's Giselle. So check her out and see if you like her. And please tune in for the concert. We'll see if we can't get a lot of people watching it. So let's see what else. Let's see. Jesse Lopez, that's hilarious. Well, Jesse said, ice usually followed by swift clap to the head. Ice is very true. So many people in South Africa don't really know any of the country's history or African history. They just learn the 10-page consolidated. Yeah. Well, okay, so ice, but that's the case everywhere, It's fascinating. When I went to primary school, we had to learn all the capitals of all the states in the country. There's 50 states. It's not a small undertaking. It's not like 9 provinces in South Africa. Okay, we know the capital is. It's a lot more challenging. We had to learn that. And I got fascinated by geography and started learning about it. But people forget those things. And if you don't use that every day, it's not something you know. It's the same thing across Africa. Not just in South Africa, and the rest of the world, quite frankly. So it is interesting how people just don't know things. But I guess on the upside, people that don't bother to learn history, then it just makes me look a lot smarter, I guess, because I actually take the time to learn it. Ice says to Jesse, that's hilarious, very true. I love hearing about, I think it's Cape Times announcer, Mampara of the Week. Yeah, that's good stuff. Jesse says, it's a still thing. Yeah, I guess it is. I haven't read the Cape Times in a while, so... Aiden says, welcome, Aiden. Aiden says, awesome, Chris. Look forward to that stream. Yeah, so do I, Aiden. Like I said, I don't even like country music, but I'm looking forward to it. So it must be something exciting. Just to Go says, same thing will happen in South Africa. For me today, to buy land, I'll need to give a 60% deposit. Okay, folks. So that should be something we talk about in the expropriation without compensation conversation on Ronaldo Host program on Sunday. But I will mention here, the African National Congress destroyed their economy overnight with the nonsense about expropriation without compensation and the lies they've told about it. Property values fell, and they are not going up. No one is going to buy land in South Africa when the possibility exists that the government can come and steal it and confiscate it from you on the basis that they need to take care of someone else. And that's the real possibility. So foreign direct investment has evaporated when it comes to land and to the farming sector in South Africa. And that's sad. It's really undermined a lot of people. And for those who have land and farm, and maybe they want to get out of farming because they're getting elderly or they want to do something else, now they're stuck. Their land's worthless. They can't sell it to anybody. They can't do anything with it. And they can't use it as collateral because banks can't confiscate or can't repossess it if they don't make their payments. This instead of following the approach that the rest of the world has done with land tenure and reform, the South African government wants to confiscate land and hand it out and do this idiotic 99-year leases. Okay, I'm getting the EPWC conversation, so I'm going to get away from that. But, yep. Sean says, I work from home, and my routine has been pretty much sleep till 11 a.m., work from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m., and the last 6 hours I work during Eastern Standard Time. Okay, cool. Ice... Talking to Jesse again, says, I don't know. Haven't heard it mentioned for a long time. Maybe it died off. Yeah. Just goes, I'm starting to like Ice. See him everywhere. Yeah, Ice is everywhere. He is. I started to wonder if Ice isn't just a bot. Are you a program bot there, Ice? No, I'm just teasing. Just kidding. Bad thing is, however, with people not learning history, is people tend to... Yeah, well, that's true. You're right. I know you're stealing from that famous line, which supposedly came from General... what was the guy in Santa Ana? Who invaded Texas and tried to take it back from Mexico. That's his famous line about repeating history. Yeah, well, people should know at least a modicum of history and geography. It really makes a big difference. There's nothing new in the world except the history you don't know. Harry S. Truman. Yeah, Harry Truman is an interesting character historically. Yep. Well, yeah, absolutely. It's funny stuff. Right, so let's see what else. We haven't really talked about, we haven't talked about rugby. I'm not a bot. Took a long time to answer that. Yeah, that's right. Ice doesn't ever sleep, Jesse. I think that's the thing. So we haven't even talked about rugby. Is anybody missing rugby? Am I the only rugby fan in the audience here? Anybody a rugby fan? Come on. Somebody's got to be a rugby fan. I am going through serious rugby withdrawal. By this time, the Six Nations should have been decided. Genuinely, not because they suspended the season. Super Rugby would be marching along towards the end of the season. Major League Rugby would be approaching the bottom third of the season. The National Hockey League, not rugby, but the National Hockey League would be getting ready to go to the playoffs, and none of that has happened. None of that's happened. Aiden says, I agree. I also don't think it's in good faith. If they truly cared about people, they would have implemented rational reform years ago. As they start losing electoral support. Yeah, exactly. Didn't take that long. What didn't take that long? Freistaat. Yeah. So no rugby, no sports. This is really a drag. I think it's at this stage that people really actually realize just how important competitive sports are for our well-being, our psyche, and for us as a community of humans, people. We really rally around sports teams and really get into sports, the whole ethos of sports. And whether you're into that fake game that they call football, soccer. Oh, yellow card, he touched me, yellow card. If you're into that sport, if you're into a real sport like rugby or hockey, or dare I even say baseball, unless you're really into a sport, you don't appreciate the impact it has on people. Province, yeah, Brew, there you go. Province, yep, that's right. All the top rugby players find it through Province eventually, except for maybe, who didn't make it there? What's his name? Bismarck Duplessis never played for Province, unfortunately. I wish he had played for Western Province. But Habana played there, Etzebeth, Dwayne Vermeulen. The list goes on. Gio Aplon. The list just goes on and on of great rugby players who played for Province. And I'm just talking recent history. I'm not even talking about the last 100 years of Western Province history. Just amazing. Aiden's taking off. Got to go to work. Hey, Aiden, thanks for joining us. You have a pleasant evening. Sleep well, and we'll catch you next time. Yes, we are. What's Neil saying yes, we are about? Not sure what that was about. Oh, rugby fans, maybe? Yep. Well, again, back to sports. So, when this Wuhan coronavirus or COVID-19 finally starts to clear up and we can do things again, I guess the question, the blue balls. Was that intentional, 10-10, the blue balls, or or is that a typo? You meant to say blue bulls. Maybe it was intentional. Anyway, the Bulls, we'll see what happens to the Bulls. They've had some great moments and some great players, and they were fantastic in Super Rugby and Currie Cup for a few years. They had a good run a few years back, but they've looked pretty sad. Yes, Neil, rugby, yep. They've looked pretty sad of late. It's unfortunate. It's really sad to see how far they've come. It's bad enough. I mean, I love Loftus because of its history, its location, but it's a stadium that's seen better days. It's bad enough they've got to play in Loftus from a aged stadium standpoint. Yeah, but they also got a bad team. I tell you what, I don't know what's going on with you folks in South Africa and your support for rugby, but shame on you as a community for the lack of support for rugby. I mean, I know that the varsity level, huge crowds go to rugby, but in Currie Cup and Super Rugby, the arguments, well, there's an oversaturation of rugby. That's why nobody's going. They're monkeying with the game. Saru's race-based policies. I get all that, but come on, folks. I mean, there are more people that show up at a freaking barbecue or a braai around the neighborhood than there are people go to stadiums to watch rugby games in South Africa. It's really depressing to watch the empty stadiums. I mean, there are some games here in the U.S. that rival South Africa games for attendance. So Major League Rugby, Seattle sells out every game. 6,000 people. That's not a lot of people. They're in a small stadium. But that's more people that show up for a lot of games like in the Free State or when the Griquas play or even at Loftus these days. It's really sad. Really, really sad. The Bulls are the best franchise-wise. Well, they've made some good moves of late. We'll see what happens. They made some really smart moves, and in the front office, we will see what happened. Let's see. Justice Ghost has been watching tennis. As I did not follow, it's all new. Kak Freistaat, true players, just not paid. Justice Ghost, you're watching tennis, you say? Let me watch that with you. Sorry, I fell asleep. No, I'm just teasing. I watched tennis a lot when I was in high school. I played tennis. I was number 3 singles and number 1 doubles. I played 2 of my high school years as tennis, so I was a big fan. I actually used to watch it back then. Chris Everett and John McEnroe, all those guys. But it's not my thing anymore. So Sean says, I don't miss watching sport as much, but I miss not being able to mountain bike and kayak. Yeah. All because of some flu bug. Yeah, let's put this in perspective, folks. So the Wuhan coronavirus has had 240,000 deaths attributed to it roughly so far. So it's 250, all right? That's 5 months. That's 5 months we know about. The Chinese have covered this up, and it probably first appeared in November, but we didn't know about it till the end of December, but they knew about it in December. So it's been 5 months. We're in our 6th month of the Wuhan coronavirus, or COVID-19. 250,000 people. This year, malaria will kill 620,000 people, most of whom are in Africa. 620,000. 800,000 suicides will take place around the world this year before COVID-19. Who knows what will happen because of the isolation and people being desperate under COVID-19. But 800,000 people. 900,000 people will die from HIV, AIDS related diseases or afflictions each year. But we've had 250,000 attributed to COVID-19. And as we're discovering in the States, those numbers are highly suspicious. First off, the Chinese are full of crap. Their numbers, you can't even trust that for 5 seconds. They're lying about how many people have died. It's probably far larger, which probably scares us. But they're telling us 80,000. That's 80,000 cases and 4,000 or 5,000 deaths. That's just nonsense. 5 million people fled out of Wuhan before they even closed the city down, many of whom already had the virus and spread it around China. That's how it got to Hong Kong. Here in the States, the numbers are also suspicious because a lot of local authorities have been taking presumed deaths and adding them to the figures. So the CDC had a blip on their site in which they went from 68 to 37,000 deaths this morning or yesterday, and they went back and changed it again. People are like, oh, they just made a mistake. No, they didn't make a mistake. They showed the actual figures. Those are the ones that people were actually tested and had COVID-19 and then died. The other ones are people who died, and many of them weren't even tested. They said, well, they had respiratory disease, so it was COVID-19, without determining the approximate cause. So 620,000 from malaria in a year, 800,000 from suicide, 900,000 from HIV, and I even talked about type 2 diabetes and hypertension, high blood pressure, and cardiovascular disease, which are much higher than that globally. 163,000 people on this planet die every single day in a normal time frame before COVID-19. In the United States, we had 35 million people who had influenza this year and about 35,000 deaths attributed to it. We now have at least 37,000 to COVID after 5 months. The influenza season is also 5 months long. It ended at the end of March. So the figures are almost identical. If you extrapolate, and this isn't simple, it doesn't quite work like this, so I'm not claiming this is perfect math, but if you extrapolate the 250,000 in 5 months over the course of a year, we're talking no more than max 525,000 people. I'm not trying to downplay the numbers. What I'm trying to say is that 525,000 people out of a population of 9 billion people on this planet will die attributed to this virus. Yet more than that will die from malaria. Did we shut the world down for malaria? Do we shut the world down for influenza? Do we shut the world down because of HIV? No. Now, yes, it's not quite the same parallel. It's highly infectious. There are lots of issues. But wouldn't a sounder approach be to protect those most vulnerable, the elderly, those with underlying conditions, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, HIV, tuberculosis? Protect those people, isolate those people so they're safe while this thing burns out. But no, we've shut the entire world down. And on what basis? And to achieve what? We've now had a lockdown here in this county for 7 weeks. And in a county of at least 450,000 people, we've had just 600 cases of COVID-19 after 6 weeks. Almost all of them having come after the lockdown occurred. We've only had 9 or 10 fatalities attributed to COVID-19. We've had hundreds of people, or not hundreds, but a few hundred people die in this county since this lockdown started of natural causes, of other issues, of traffic accidents. So why have we shut the world's economy down? We obeyed like good little lemmings. We did what we were told to do. We've behaved. We've done our social distancing. We can still do that. But you've got to let the economy get back. You've got to let people work. And no, it's not just rich people. And it's certainly not just rich white men who want the world's economy to work. People have to feed their families. People have to go to uni to learn, to get an education. You can't put the world on hold forever. This is something that truly is a hysterical reaction on the part of governments around the world. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not attributing this to conspiracy. I'm not accusing government leaders of malfeasance. But I am accusing them of hysterical reactions without being transparent to the public to truly explain. For instance, South Africa, why can't you have cigarettes? And I don't want to hear about, and they roll the papers, the saliva. And then they share that Zol. No, that's nonsense. You're contributing to people sharing Zols in South Africa and Nkosi Dalimizuma with your idiotic decision to ban the sale of cigarettes. Now, why are you doing that? Is the rumor true that you get money from the criminal syndicates? I'm not accusing you of that, but now you got people wondering about it. And the rumor spreads and it goes around because you've made an irrational decision. She said that because 2,000 of the responses to whether they should renew the sales were against people being able to buy cigarettes. Okay. But that's out of 70,000 responses. That's 2.8% of the responses. So for 2.8% of the population saying that you shouldn't have cigarette sales. You're not going to have cigarette sales. Now, don't get me wrong. I hate cigarettes. I find them nasty, disgusting. The smell bothers me. I get a headache from people smoking. One cigarette 30 feet away can give me a headache. True story. I can smell a cigarette from 100 meters. True story. No, I'm not a canine, not a dog, but I can smell a cigarette from 100 meters. I'm not in favor of cigarettes. But people not being able to buy cigarettes on the basis that it's a health issue because people roll cigarettes, then don't sell loose tobacco and rolling papers. Sell cigarettes in packs so that people smoke them. Well, then they'll just share them. Well, listen, my friend. She's not my friend, but listen. People in townships who share cigarettes, Azol, they lick the papers with their saliva. Those people are the same people sharing their Frappuccino glass. They don't have one. They probably have a very stumpy. They're sharing and drinking out of the same thing. So stopping them from having rolling papers and cigarettes is not going to stop the health crisis. And certainly not allowing people to buy cigarettes that are packaged in a package for individual use is not going to stop the crisis. In the meantime, you have people who are addicted to nicotine. They are suffering. Where is the compassion for these people? I hate cigarettes and I don't like smoking, but I have compassion for these people. Anyway, it's just insane. So a bunch of comments came in when I got on that. So let me go back and see if it's to me or to you guys back and forth. So do you think professional players? Okay, so this is back. Intentional, yeah, intentional. That's what I thought. Blue balls. So Ice says, do you think professional players will still keep earning the huge salaries like before COVID-19? Cristiano Ronaldo's salary is $31 million. No, I don't think so. I think that COVID-19 is going to have a disastrous impact on professional sports franchises around the planet, and it's really going to hurt. So rugby players are going to suffer a lot from this. Some professional rugby leagues may not survive. I hope that's not the case, but that may be the case. After this is over, people are still going to need to get haircuts. They're going to need to get shaves. Women are going to need to get nails done, manicures, pedicures. People are going to see doctors. They're going to have to eat. They have to go to restaurants. They're going to need petrol. All that's going to happen. Now, some businesses may go out, but someone will come back in and fill the gap. But other activities aren't necessarily going to come back. You're going to have a whole lot of things. Dog walkers. How many dog walkers are going to have a job after this is all over? People are going to say, oh, I didn't need that. I walk my dog the whole time. Why should I spend this much money paying a dog walker? I'm embellishing a little bit, but my point is that some industries, some businesses are just going to disappear and they're not going to come back. Certainly not in the short term. Maybe in the long term they might come back. And that's going to be the case with some sports franchises. So a lot of players, these big paydays, they're over. Now, they may come back in 3 to 5 years after this thing ends. But if governments react the same way when the virus comes back and flames up in November, which it's going to do again, folks, it's going to be seasonal. It's going to come back again. We've got no evidence to indicate that it's not. It's not a one-off. We're not going to simply vanquish it and it's gone. This isn't smallpox. We eradicated smallpox in the wild. We're not going to eradicate this virus in the wild. It's highly unlikely given how infectious it is. So when it comes back, are we going to shut the world down again in November or January of 2021 and go through this all again? Civil disorder is just going to be off the charts. Anyway, so where are we at? I think the sports things are going to go on. The Bulls are the best franchise-wise. Okay, I already said that. Greek Wiz have the best talent. I love the Greek Wiz. I love their jerseys, the teal. I want a Greek Wiz jersey. I've never been able to get one. I should have got one when I was in Kimberly, but I didn't do it. I was too busy and I was hurried. I was trying to get to a Tri-Nations match. There was Tri-Nations. It was the Springboks against the All Blacks. Mornay Sten scored all the points that day, and we beat the All Blacks in Bloemfontein. Never saw so many Afrikaners in my life. There were about 46,000 Afrikaners there. I saw a guy with an actual Springbok head he was wearing. Anyway, crazy stuff. But I didn't get a Greek Wiz jersey. I wish I had. Ice says, I think even Loftus has hardly any 3,000 people coming to that stadium. Some days it looked like, yeah, I know, it's pathetic, Ice. It's really bad. Lots of excuses given for it. But it's really sad to see the place that when I think of rugby, I think, of course, the Six Nations countries, minus Italy. That's not a natural player, but the other 5. I think of them, and I think, of course, of South Africa and New Zealand. That's when I think of rugby. That's what comes to mind. So anyway, So Jesse, the brew misses hunting. Didn't you say that earlier? You're trying to get me to say that again? You miss hunting. What sort of hunting? What do you hunt? Kudu, eland, impala? What do you go after? Jesse says, she's asking Ice, so why the low attendance? I'm not a huge sports guy, but people know. Boxing passes never go. Well, there's a lot of reasons for it, Jesse, and a lot of supposition for it. One is the big argument that comes from rugby officials from SARU, the South African Rugby Union, from Super Rugby and the Currie Cup, is the saturation. There's simply too many rugby competitions and too much rugby on TV and too many games to go to. I don't buy that. I mean, here in the States, we have professional baseball. I can go to Harrisburg, York, Lancaster, Frederick and Hagerstown, all within an hour of where I'm at, and watch professional baseball. And then I can go an extra hour and watch, or an extra 20 minutes and watch Allentown or Scranton. So that's six teams within 2 hours of here, and go to Philadelphia for watch Major League Baseball, Baltimore, DC, all 2 hours away, and New York 3 hours away. So I can watch literally almost 20 professional baseball teams around here, and all those teams draw crowds. And baseball's not nearly as popular today as it was when I was a kid. So I'm not buying that saturation is the problem in South Africa. It might be part of it. It has also to do with crime. People don't want to be bothered driving to Ellis Park, only to have their car broken into, or have to get on a bus and ride back to Santon City or somewhere near there to get out of the area safely. That's part of it. But there's other issues too. The way that rugby is marketed in South Africa, I think, is abysmal, and that's shameful. So there's lots of reasons for it. And then some people are just irritated with the SARU's race-based policies and the argument that the Springboks have to be 50% black. And teams have to be 50% black. Instead of investing money in non-traditional rugby communities, that's what SARU should be doing, their solution is simply to dictate that this many players will be this skin color, which is just ludicrous. If you want black kids to play rugby, then you invest in rugby in communities so that kids learn how to play rugby at a young age. They develop an interest in it, they develop the skills, and then they go on to play rugby. And you get them there. That's a natural way for people to develop interest in a sport, not artificially pushing people based on race quotas. And some of that's turned people off, and that's one of the reasons why crowds have been small. Plus, you can watch all the games on TV in South Africa. You get Super Sport, no big deal. Turn on your DSTV, put on Super Sport. You're not paying anything. You don't have to worry about getting shot or robbed, and you can watch the game. But it's depressing to see nobody in the crowds. It's really sad. It's a bad reflection on South Africa. I mean, just a short time ago, the stadiums were full, 40, 50, 60,000 people in these stadiums just a few years ago. It's not like it was 30 or 40 years ago, just a few years ago. Let's see. ICE says, Justicus ZA needs to relax gun laws as hunting will be much bigger at GB. Yeah, it could be. Absolutely could be. But the ANC has gone out of its way to make it difficult to become a lawful gun owner. Whether it's creating registration for existing arms and then not making the forms available for people who try to register their arms, thereby making people criminals when they were legal, or it's simply the process of getting certified, trained, and registered to have a gun. It's very difficult in South Africa. Here in the United States, there's this lunatic movement trying to do the same thing about guns in the United States. And they're doing it on spurious grounds, talking about mass shootings, which have very little to do with gun ownership and have everything to do with people with mental disorders getting access to guns illegally and or criminals getting access to guns illegally. And if the government did its job properly, the number of those shootings would be dramatically reduced, but it doesn't. And so governments who are run by leftists fall back on trying to censor and take away our constitutionally guaranteed rights, and they've been getting away with it, although there are court challenges to this. Virginia is notorious for this. Now, Canada has just passed, I don't know if it's legislation or Trudeau just on his own did this executive order. I don't know what's going on, but now Canada is also banning the sale and transportation of assault weapons. There's no such thing as assault weapon. Every weapon is an assault weapon. But we're talking about high-capacity magazines, AK-47s, semi-automatic rifles, and things like that. They don't want people to own them because of mass shootings. They've had a handful of mass shootings in their history, and suddenly that's the problem. When for centuries they've had law-abiding Canadians who have owned weapons and weapons like these for decades without incident. The government must fulfill its responsibility. There's a compact between the polity, the body politic, and the government. When the government breaks that compact and then tries to abrogate your rights, we have situations like we have today, both in South Africa, Canada, and also here in the United States. Let's see. ICE says, The Bruce says, staying home lowers your immune system, so we will be having more deaths due to the flu. Well, if you mean by that, the brew, you're not exposed to things, and so that's a true statement. That's one of the reasons why kids get sick at school, because they're young kids in primary school, they're exposed to everything, and then they come back, and their immune system adapts to it, and they get stronger as a consequence. Yep. So not staying at home, you're not being exposed to pathogens you would normally be exposed to, and that puts you more at risk in theory, and in practice, that's probably the case. So ICE says to Jesse, honestly, I'm not sure. I don't know if tickets, petrol, beer, and food are too expensive, added up, and thus people. I don't think that's the issue, ICE, the cost of things. There are plenty of South Africans who went to games just a couple years ago, and the prices of tickets and things are not that dramatically higher for the most part. Look, I mean, I just saw Snotkop's concert being advertised for 49 Rand. 49 Rand? That's like that's like $3 or $4. I can go to a concert for $3 with a top artist in South Africa. Hey, sign me up, man. I mean, if I could go to a Who concert for $3, that ain't the case. Concert tickets here in America, $200, $300, $400. It's insane. It's insane. Cheapest concert tickets are usually $75 US. Jeez, that's 49 Rand to go to a concert. That's just insane. Anyway, so let's see what else. Yes, as well at home. The brew, it's an opportunity. The world shows it. Jesse Lopez, instant replay and drink and all. Yeah, you do. And commentary, that's an important thing too. The World Cups, this last one, they kind of screwed the pooch. But in the past, what's happened is that you go to the World Cup. I did it in England. I did it in New Zealand. You get to purchase the little radio, AM radio, which you can put over your ear. It has a lanyard on it. And you can listen to the broadcast of the rugby match that you're at. And it only works in the vicinity of the stadium because it's a short-range AM signal. Only goes a short distance. But you buy that, you can listen to all the games, and it's fantastic. So you can have the experience of being at home, having the commentators, which adds a lot to the rugby game, no doubt about it. Any sporting event, if you got good announcers and good color commentators, it really adds to the experience. But you can get that at World Cup games by having that. They should do that in all rugby. You should be able to buy a radio, say the Curry Cup radio, put that little thing on your ear, and listen to the commentators on TV at every match. That would go a long way to get a lot more people to get off their duffs and go out to the stadiums and watch the game on the pitch there. Okay. Justica is laughing. Ice says, I know the liquor ban at Newlands pissed a lot of people off. Yeah, I'm not sure if Loftus and some of the other stadiums did that, but I don't know. But I know people who used to go to Newlands don't. Yeah, stopping beer sales is a major problem. I don't know why they did that at Newlands. That was stupid. Of course, Newlands is going away now. They're going to demolish it, I guess, which is unfortunate and sad. It has a storied history. Kind of sad to see it go. Just goes, I stopped smoking from January, but seriously, yeah, no health crisis. I'd love a petty. Oh, a petty. Virus is not seasonal. Flu is, though. What virus? The flu is a virus. Influenza is a virus. Are you talking about the Wuhan coronavirus, COVID-19 brew? We don't know if it's seasonal. I'm saying that it's likely that it will be seasonal, that it'll come back. It's not going to go away. It's not going anywhere. It's sitting somewhere. The number of cases will be diminished out of the season, I think, and I suspect that when we get back in the season, it'll strike again. Technically, as far as I understand, the flu is caused by influenza virus. That's correct, Ice. I just said that I'm behind. Not the easy meat bush pig. Okay, God bless. I just jumped ahead of me here. Flock, fark, those wild piggies. Okay, you guys are having fun here now. We don't have influenza virus. Influenza is a condition, same as TB. Influenza is caused by a virus. It has RNA, ribonucleic acid, which is the basis for its instructions and how it invades your body. It mutates, and that's why we have a vaccine for it each year, but the efficacy of it is limited, and it's based on the early indicators of it each year. That's when they develop it. When I heard walk, stalk, bush pigs, yeah. Ice says, Chris, you're right. SA, marketing, and advertising is abysmal across the board. Lots we can learn from the U.S. when it comes to that, but maybe we don't want to look to the West. Okay, so yeah, here's the thing. So when I talk about America getting involved in Africa, one of the things I talk about is that America is a premier leader in the world when it comes to mass media, telecommunications, internet, and marketing. We have brilliant marketing people. Why don't we have marketing firms in Africa trying to help Africans sell their products and design them with packaging and taglines and advertising that make them more appealing? Why not? If the Moroccans are smart enough to enter the insurance market in West Africa, in Francophone countries, because the language first and the proximity to Morocco, but then realizing they can make money by buying into local businesses or buying up local businesses and spreading their insurance market across West Africa, why can't American firms who have extensive experience in marketing be involved in the African market? One easy place for us to go is all American record companies. Why aren't these record labels in Africa with these amazing artists that you find in Southern and especially in West Africa signing contracts, building studios, producing CDs, and marketing these guys to make money? Now, part of it's, in that case, it's intellectual property protection, so I get that. So until the African Continental Free Trade Agreement works that out, that's going to remain an issue. Let me see what else. Problem is not automatic weapons, it's postal workers. Ha 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 ha. Just to go says, off topic, just tested my new apple juice. Okay, I designed lab equipment if anyone wondered. I designed a ventilator for under $10,000 that can help 30 people at one time. Wow, okay, interesting. Radio Raps concert for $5. Yeah, five rand. But that's he's doing it online, right? So I mean that's a little bit different. But I meant actually, I think the Snot Cup was an advertisement for a concert supposed to take place later in the winter time, summertime here, but later in winter. But yeah, $5. That's a good deal if he's doing it online. Radio Raps. I have a hard time keeping up with him because it's humor and Afrikaans, and so it's challenging for me. Ice says, I don't think it's so much that the tickets are expensive, but for like Rand 900, you can watch all the games DSTV compared to one game. Yeah, that's a fair point. I think that's a valid point. But we have all of our sports in the U.S. covered in television and still massive crowds at sporting events. A bigger country, but we also have many more sports. I mean, we have lacrosse. People go to lacrosse games. Anyway, so yeah, but I think you're on to something there. But playing around, I should go into alcohol. Profits a lot better. Yeah, well, alcohol profits can be pretty good. I am a shareholder in AB InBev, the owner of Anheuser-Busch, which used to be an American company, but belongs to the Belgian/Brazilian AB InBev company, the same one that owns South African breweries these days, if I'm not mistaken. No longer South African owned, if I'm not mistaken. ICE says buying power is taking a huge hit as inflation is way over the 4 to 6%. People's paychecks aren't keeping up with petrol. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. The official figures are, I think, out of. Oh, the brew's taken off. Like a slap menza. Okay, yeah, you sleep well too, brew. Thanks for joining us tonight. Really enjoyed it. Jesse says, sadly, I need to go too. Oh, it's late for you guys. I only came on because people asked me to come on from Jerem's broadcast. This is kind of an impromptu thing. Pretend to work tomorrow. Thanks for the chat, Chris. Take care. Yep, thank you guys. Appreciate it. So ICE says, American marketing and customer service is probably the best in the world. I don't get how people don't look to learn from Americans with regards to this. I don't get it. Missed opportunity. Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of reasons for it, ICE. Some of it's bigotry. A lot of it is misunderstanding of what America's about or what's going on. And quite frankly, a lot of the blame falls on American firms. And this is something I'm trying to correct and help change as we go forward. Americans must be looking at Africa. If we don't, we're going to miss the gravy train. We're going to miss the El Dorado of the 21st century. From 2020 to 2050, you will see the major demographic and economic growth in Africa. That's where it's going to be. That's where it's going to be. And American companies just aren't seeing that. They look at Africa and they see 54, 55 countries, and they see the 3C that I always talk about. So let me write that down. So use my whiteboard. So I call it C cubed. My handwriting is atrocious, especially when I'm writing on the fly. But this is something I coined a long time ago to talk about the challenges in Africa, and I call it the 3C. I don't know how well you can see that, but that's C cubed. Chaos, corruption, and coup d'etat. Chaos, corruption, and coup d'etat. C cubed. This is what a lot of American businessmen see, and women, when they look to the continent of Africa, and they think of Africa as a place, dangerous place, lots of trouble. And while a lot of those things are true, and they certainly were true of much of the continent for a long period of time since independence in the 1960s forward. For instance, some countries had 20, 23 coups. It's largely not the case with Africa today, and it's misleading to fall back on that. Yes, there is insurgency in Nigeria with Boko Haram and the Lake Chad Basin, and you have Al-Shabaab in Somalia, and you have Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb in Mali, and having attacked Mauritania and Niger. Yes, that's all true. And you've got high crime in South Africa, but not the only place. You have corruption in Nigeria. You have lots of issues across Africa. But the old narrative of C cubed, chaos, corruption, and coup d'etat is largely not the case of Africa today. And so the other challenge a lot of American companies have is they look at Africa and they see Africa as all these different little tiny markets, and they got to enter so many places. When in reality, because of the regional economic communities, you can often enter 5 or 6 places in Africa and gain access to most of the continent. So you can go into an ECOWAS country and say, for instance, maybe Liberia, maybe not the best choice, or Nigeria. Ghana is probably a very good choice to get into ECOWAS. You get in there, you can get into the whole market. SADC, you can go into South Africa, Botswana, somewhere like that. You're into the whole SADC market. And the same with the EAC or EGAD. And so now with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, if it actually comes to fruition in the fashion that they claim it will, it's in effect now, but not much is happening under it because it's the early stages of it, and they still haven't protected intellectual property, copyrights, and trademarks. That won't come until January of 2021. That was the plan, is that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement would be presenting the intellectual property rules and copyright and trademark protections at the African Union Summit in January 2021. With COVID-19, I don't know if that's still going to happen, but until that's done, you're going to find a lot of people from outside the region, except for the Chinese, who have no trouble violating copyright, trademark, or infringing on your brands. Except for the Chinese, you're going to find most people who are not going to get involved in Africa until they can be assured of protections like that. So same with drug manufacturers. If they can't develop a drug in Africa to have protections for it so they can recoup the cost of developing it and make a profit off it, they're not going to invest in Africa. Only generics will do that. So these are things that are coming down the road. But anyway, so I'm trying to get American companies to pay attention to Africa and realize it's not simply 54, 55 different markets, nothing but chaos and nonsense. So just trying to get people to pay attention to that. Otherwise, we run the risk of being a second-rate global power in the year 2050, which is not that far away. The U.S. could be a second-rate country if we're not taking advantage of the coming economic growth and bonanza in Africa. And when I say take advantage, that's not to the detriment of Africans. This is a mutually profitable situation. Americans can invest in Africa, not just Americans, but Chinese and Argentinians and Europeans, whomever wants to do it, plus Africans. But folks can invest in Africa, and they can benefit from it, as can Africans. But you got to open people's eyes to it, and that's the challenge. That's one of the reasons why I spoke at the Trade with Africa Summit last year in Chicago, and I talked about the state of U.S. and African trade, which is really not that robust. Anyway, so Jessica says, my father had to go to USA-owned mine in Mali. Massive uprising, really was a strike. People wanted to work 15 days on. 15 days on, 15 days off? What do they think, they're guards? Yeah, no, that's an unrealistic expectation. You can't have a mine. You'd have to have 3 times the workforce. You can't work for 15 days and take 15 days off. You'd have to have a workforce work for 15 days, then another workforce come in and work for 15 days, and another workforce is like, you just can't do it. At minimum, you have to have 2 workforces. And so you double your labor cost, and then you impinge on your profitability. It just is not a functional thing. It's not going to work. Right. So anything else, guys? Anything you want to bring up? We've been on here for about 2.5 hours. It's getting late in Africa. Let me see. So ICE says, that's one thing I found. South African people have such false ideas of Americans in the U.S., and it's so far removed from reality. It's not even funny. I was so surprised on visiting the U.S. Yeah, how, 30-day shifts, okay. How so many South Africans have ideas based on movies or some people's opinions that aren't based on reality and facts. I was told by so many people Americans aren't nice people. Yeah, so, okay, I'm obviously biased, but I've been around the world. And I will tell you that Americans, by and large, are the friendliest people you're ever going to meet. There are other friendly people and wonderful and engaging people, but Americans just natural, by and large. Now, don't go into Manhattan and say, well, but Chris, you said they were friendly. Nobody even said hello to me. That's a major city. I'm talking about in the country as a people, culturally. Americans are very engaging. We're very quick to go to first names. We're very quick to say hello to anybody and ask people and ask very personal questions, which a lot of people find off-putting. These Americans asking us personal, and then we share personal information. Now, obviously not everybody does it, but Americans are very friendly. But you're right. The problem is that a lot of people get their views about Americans and America from other people who have agendas or bias because of bad experience, or just they're misinformed, or they have an agenda. And from television, we're not all Rambo. We don't sit around with deer knives and jump through the woods, and fight local sheriffs because we're Vietnam veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. And we don't all kill bunny rabbits in bathtubs, playing close. You can't rely on popular media to be your basis. If I judged South Africa based on popular media, then this is what I would have to go on, ladies and gentlemen. So for the South Africans still in the crowd, this is what I would have to go on. I would have Leon Schuster. I would have Fanny Faris Lobola. I would have White Wedding. And this would be the nature of what I would learn about South Africa. Or I could watch Orkney Skorkney, and that would be the basis of what I would learn about South African culture. Now, you tell me that is all accurate and reflective of South African society. It's not. Lots of things in there are part of South African society. They are reflective. They are interesting. By the way, the current Doctor Who was in White Wedding, if I'm not mistaken. She played the English girl in that movie, which was quite entertaining, I thought. But anyway, so you can't base it on that. The reality is quite different. So let me give you a little story here to tell you, put some local flavor on this. I attended L'École d'État-Major. That's the Tunisian Staff College based in Tunisia. And it's a staff college level. And I already did it in the U.S., but I was there in Tunisia, so I attended it. It's taught in French. So I had to go to work every day in school in French. So I had a classmate who used to wear administrative insignia on his uniform. And he was very well informed. He spoke English fluently. He went to the university to study American studies. And so the officer from Niger and I and the Mauritanians said to him, he said, "You're not administrative. You're a spy. You're an intelligence officer." He's like, "No. I work administration. I'm not intelligence." And we're like, "Bullshit. You're a spy." So we had fun with him the whole year. So he was the only person in the course that, well, he was a bachelor in the course, and he wasn't married. So a few years later, I was working at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I got this strange email, and I looked at the address, and it had CDT in it, which is a French abbreviation for major or commandant. And I'm like, he said, "It's me. Is it you?" And I thought it was a spam, so I was going to delete it. And then I wrote and I said, "Yes, it's me. Is it you?" I had no idea what it was. And I got the word back. He had gotten married, and he had been sent to the States to attend a course. And he was attending a course for foreign intelligence officers at the Defense Intelligence Agency. So I was like, "Wait a second. I thought you weren't." I was at the National Security Agency now. I thought you didn't work for intelligence. So I went down, met him and his wife, took him around. Now, this is a person who'd gone to university and studied about America. He was very well informed, very analytical, very smart, spoke English fluently, and knew a lot about America. But he understood that Americans only cared about individualism, that family wasn't important to Americans. Americans weren't religious. Americans had no reflection back on the past. It's all about personal achievement. While personal achievement and individualism are part of the American psyche, family, faith are as much or more important than individualism. So took him out to Gettysburg, to the battlefield site where he had been taken by the Defense Intelligence Agency on a tour with a professional tour guide. I walked around and pointed out the battle sites and places where my ancestors fought in the 1863 at the Battle of Gettysburg and the regiments they were in. And I said, "This is what they fought for." And his wife was like, "This is amazing," because she didn't take the trip. And he's like, "This is amazing." I said, "But you did this trip." He goes, "Yeah, but they didn't tell us any stuff like this. This is amazing." So on the way back, I stopped in Frederick County, Maryland, where my great-great-grandfather, who was a carpenter and a farmer, built his house and houses for, I think, four of his sons or something like that. So I drove around and I took him to the house. And I said, "That's where my great-great-grandfather, his name was Garber, he built the house there. And let's go down here about a kilometer." And I showed him, I said, "This house, he built this for his eldest son." And that he's like, "How do you know these things?" I said, "Well," he said, "I thought Americans didn't care about family." I said, "Well, I'm a genealogist, and so this is my family history, and so it's something I study and I know about." And so he was just astounded. So then took him to Annapolis. He'd been to Annapolis before, showed him the Alex Haley Memorial. It's a bronze statue where Alex Haley, the person who wrote the book Roots, about the history of his family, going back through American history and slavery when his ancestor Kunta Kinte was brought here from West Africa. And anyway, so Alex Haley reading to children. It's a bunch of bronze statues at the Inner Harbor in Annapolis. The reason it's there is because Alex Haley's ancestor, Kunta Kinte, was brought to Annapolis as a slave and sold there into bondage, into America. So he traced the history back. So Alex Haley's very famous. I showed him that. I showed him the courthouse and the Naval Academy. He's like, I thought Americans didn't care about these things. I said, "Okay." So when I had the conversation with him, a very intelligent, very articulate person who knew a lot about America and could recite about our politics, our system of government, about our history, yet didn't get the connection that Americans have to faith and family and their environment around them, just thinking that what he'd read, that Americans are all about rugged individualism and it's all about individual success and team isn't what matters. A person who's very intelligent, yet didn't get that connection. And this is because that part was missing. That wasn't shared because where he was learning the history, that wasn't part of what was included in it. So people have wrong impressions about every country. I mean, Americans, famously, I know a lot of South Africans say, I went to the States, white South Africans or black South Africans, went to the States and I talked to somebody and I said, "I'm from South Africa. Do you have lions in your front yard? Do you have tigers?" First off, there are no tigers in Africa. Yes, we know that. But of course, those Americans never learned that because it wasn't germane or it wasn't something that was studied. So it's understandable why and how people don't understand fully other places. And living in a place can help, but sometimes you still don't fully. Now, having said that, I'm of the firm opinion that there are some people who naturally have the ability to empathize and understand and figure things out and get the mindset and psyche of other people without ever having been to a place. I've seen incredibly talented people that have never been to a place. So, for instance, when I was doing genealogy, I went to Salt Lake City to the Latter-day Saints library, the Mormons. And a colleague of mine, his brother was a paid researcher there. Never been to Germany, doesn't speak a word of German, but he's a professional researcher. And so I had been to that library before looking for something on my great-great-grandfather, Friedrich Wilhelm Aspelmeyer, who came from Wiehengebirge in Lübeck, the northern part of Germany, and I couldn't find anything. So I went there, met on a Saturday with this guy, Paul Horlacher, not Paul, Paul was his brother, but Gary Horlacher. And Gary said to me, so what are you looking for? And I explained to him, he goes, that sounds like a Westphalian name. Now, at this stage in my life, I've been speaking German for 25 years. I was fluent in it. I had served 2 tours in Germany, over 10 years in Germany, and I didn't know this. And I said, okay, Westphalian name, if you say so. So come here, come with me. And he walked to a bookshelf where I'd previously been, and he looked up, and he goes, here. And he pulled this book off the shelf, a book that I had walked by several times. It's all in German. He doesn't speak German, but he understands the key terms, and he understands the context of how this book came about and who would be in it. And sure enough, in that book was an annotation for my great-great-grandfather having left for the States. Now, they got the date wrong because they got the date of his birth, and they put in as the date that he departed. He actually departed in 1848 after the revolution in Europe, in which the revolutions failed, and the empires still retained control, the monarchies retained control, despite an effort for democratic revolution in Europe in 1848. So the territory that he lived in had been absorbed by Prussia as a consequence of that. And rather than serve in the Prussian army, he said, Futsek, I'm out of here. And he immigrated to America in 1848. But in the book, the person who wrote down his date of birth, which I knew, and so the dates correlated, and I was able to trace it back and follow him back to Germany. But the point is that Gary Horlacher, who doesn't speak German, who'd never been to Germany, but he innately understood what he was dealing with because he just had that kind of empathy and intelligence and understanding. And I'm saying that some people have that ability. It's a small number of people. It's not a lot of people. You don't have to have been a place to get it and understand it. You really don't. It helps, but it's not necessary for some people. But for most people, you have to experience it. Otherwise, you don't really appreciate it and understand it. You just know what you read, you know what you see on TV, you know what you listen to. And that isn't always the full story. In fact, it's often not the full story. So Neil says, if you go to Zambia, there are a lot of people that are humble. Yeah, okay. I've been to Zambia. That's been my experience. I've been to Lusaka and I've been to other parts of Zambia. I've never been to the Copper Belt, but I have been there. But I don't speak, I've been to the eastern side of Zambia too, where they speak Chichewa. And of course they speak it also in Malawi. I've been to Malawi many times. Used to work there. But I've been to Lusaka, and people are quite humble and quite friendly. And I didn't see the racial hang-ups in Zambia that you see in Zimbabwe, but especially in South Africa, in Zambia. Maybe because they always had a smaller European or white population. But I'm not sure. That may be because they've been independent for a while. Ice says, lots of people have traveled to South Africa say we are the friendliest people, and I'm supposed to be biased. But I found Americans to be even more friendly than South Africans. I would agree, Ice. I have great experience in South Africa, and South Africans can be very friendly. But the environment makes people nervous at times, particularly if they know what's going on when it comes to crime. And so I'm talking about visitors. They're less inclined to notice the friendliness of South Africans. But South Africans, by and large, are very friendly, and that's across ethnic groups. I find very friendly people from all ethnic groups who are happy to engage, and especially when they find out that I'm American, they really enjoy that, most people. Not the ones trying to rob me, but just the ones who are just trying to engage and be part of the conversation and learn about things. So I would say South Africa and USA are the two countries that are friendly. Yeah, that might be a fair argument. A lot of people around the world are very standoffish, but Americans and South Africans tend to be very friendly. You know, there are a lot of parallels between American history and South African history. Some of them not comfortable, history of racial discrimination, but we also have this unbound enthusiasm, this willingness to pick up stakes and move and to grow and expand and get away from civil authority, to be independent and be free thinkers, and our culture with hunting and things like that, and independence and free thinking. There are many similarities in South Africa. And then that's not just tied to the Boers and the Great Trek and Afrikaners, but I mean, think of the Bantu too. They came down the Rift Valley and moved down through Zimbabwe into past Swaziland into South Africa. They had that unbound enthusiasm, that expansion, that southern expansion. For the Afrikaners, it was the eastward and northward expansion, and for Americans, it was the westward expansion. So we have many similarities. It's a lot of parallels there, which gives a natural affinity for South Africans and Americans, which most South Africans and Americans don't even realize. I do. At least that's my perspective on it. That's how I'm thinking for my life. I says, side note, I was so disappointed that I missed Jerem's stream earlier. I just started watching it and I got the notification you went live. Well, Germ had just ended. I didn't come on. So you would have missed it anyway if you were just coming on. I only started the stream because I was in Ronaldo's stream and I was actually going to go. I already exercised and came back. I was going to watch some TV or do some reading, and then I went on my laptop to check to see how many people have been watching my channel. And then I saw that Ronaldo was on, and so I went on and watched his channel. We chatted for a bit, and then he was having a little bit of fun because he drew Germ's stream into his stream, and he was cracking on Germ talking about how he's gained weight and how he and his guests were drunk, and it was actually entertaining. So I stuck with it, and then Ronaldo decided to hang it up. So while he was still on, I and somebody else, who was it, was with me. Somebody was on with me. Oh, it was William van der Vaart. Both of us pulled up, without my knowing, he pulled up Germ's stream. So I had Germ's stream on silent and Ronaldo's on the voice. Then Ronaldo dropped off, so I went into Germ's. I don't go to Germ's stream that often, but I went in, stuck with it for a bit. He had this guy, Hugo Kruger, from who's a South African who's in France. And then he brought Ronaldo in, and so they were chatting. And when Ronaldo and Hugo and Germ were chatting, only Hugo was paying attention to the chat, so we were left to our own devices. So we're all chatting over there, and so then suddenly Jerem decided to cut it off because he'd been on for a while. And when he did that, I'm like, I had to go live. I wasn't planning on streaming today. I had to do my stray voltage stream because it looked like people wanted to keep chatting. And when I said that, somebody said, "Yeah, Chris, you should go stream." And I said, well, just joking. I said, well, if 5 people ask me to stream, then I'll go stream. And more than 5 people said, please stream. So I said 15 minutes afterwards, I'll go live. And that's what happened. So you can go back and watch Germ's stream. I'll probably watch it just to see what the first part was. Because I'm with Ronaldo. It looked like Germ was drunk. It looked like he'd had too many rum and cokes or something there. I won't comment on the weight gain thing. That's something between Ronaldo and Germ. It may be true. But let's be fair, folks. With people stuck in their houses, not able to exercise now for a month in some cases, it wouldn't be surprising if a lot of us put on a few pounds. Now, I've been able to exercise, so I'm staying slim and hopefully sexy here. But for some people, it's been a real challenge, so we'll see. Let's see what else. Ice says, that's so interesting. I'd love to go trace my German ancestry on my dad's side. There are so many of our family tree in America. It's insane. Some arrived hundreds of years ago. So for me, my first ancestor arrived in the United States, what's the United States, North America, in 1621. Sir Francis Wyatt, or 1623, I think it's 21, Sir Francis Wyatt was the first royal governor of the Jamestown colony of Virginia. Just lost somebody else. It must be getting late. So he was the first. Oh, you need to go on a diet. Yeah. So Sir Francis Wyatt was the first royal governor of Jamestown colony. From 1607 to 1621, the governors were appointed by the company. So they were private governors. They weren't government officials. But in 1621, the king had enough. And he said, enough of this nonsense. You may have a charter to have the Jamestown colony company, but I'm going to send a royal governor. So he sent Sir Francis Wyatt, who is my 17th great uncle, to be the first governor. Now, he's not my direct ancestor. He was my uncle. But his brother, the Reverend Hout Wyatt, or Hout Wyatt, however it's pronounced, I'm not sure. The English, they always pronounce things funny. So the Reverend Hout Wyatt came to America, and he is the progenitor of the Wyatt line in North America. Now, there's another Wyatt who came into Massachusetts in the 17th century, but that's not who I'm descended from, and the number of people descended from him are rather small. The vast majority of the 75 to 90,000 people with the surname Wyatt in North America today are descended from him or got the name as a consequence of slavery. It's about 15,000 black North Americans who are either black or mixed race who are descended with the surname Wyatt, most of them mixed race. So we all descend from that guy. And so he came in 1621. That was my first immigrant ancestor who came to America. My last immigrant ancestor came here in 1648. 49. It was not the gentleman Friedrich Wilhelm Aspelmeyer, but another one who came named Wohler, who came here as a piano maker for the Knabbe Piano Company in Baltimore, which used to be a big piano company. Anyway, Wohler was the last one who came here, Heinrich Wohler, Henry Wohler. So he came here 1849. So that's it. So I'm old school. All of my ancestors have been here for over 150 years. So we've been here a long time. When people talk about Ellis Island, it has no impact on me. I don't have a single immigrant ancestor who came that late in America's history. All of mine came in the early days. So if people want to blame the old sins of America, colonization and dispossessing the Native Americans and slavery, I guess you can look to my ancestors. But the irony is that most people who are white or of European descent in the United States today, their folks didn't get here until the end of the 19th century, 1880s, 1890s, 1900, long after the Civil War. Most people's ancestors came then. So we're the original sinners. We're the ones who got here early on. And my family history goes back very early in the history of Virginia, Maryland, and then New Amsterdam. I have an ancestor who was a magistrate in New Amsterdam when the English took it over. They were using patronyms, and they were directed that they had to come up with a surname by a certain date. Otherwise, they're going to pay a fine. So my ancestor chose a made-up surname, which is called Wyckoff or Wyckoff. And that came from a combination of like the German word for Hof, or place, building, something like that. Hof and Wick, which was tied to being a magistrate or working with the law, justice, being a sheriff. And so he came up Wyckoff or Wyckoff, as it's pronounced today in North America. And there's about 90,000 Wyckoffs. And that family history traces back to the Netherlands and even back to Sweden in the year 565, I think it is, as part of the Hanseatic League. So ancestors in New Amsterdam, amongst the first settlers there, my Dutch ancestors. And then I also have pilgrims who are among the very early ancestors, or very early arrivals to Massachusetts, including Winthrop, which is a very famous surname and a key figure in early American history. All of those are my ancestors going back. That's not to impress anybody. That just shows that my folks have been here for a while. Not nearly as long as, say, the Cherokee or the Apache or anyone else like that, Native Americans, but certainly a very long time, early in American history. I have ancestors that fought in every major conflict in American history, absolutely, including French and Indian War and going way back. So it's interesting. So genealogy is something I do as a historian. Family history I find to be fascinating. It's pretty cool stuff. Let's see. I'm a European bastard. My family. Oh, bastard. My family's from all over. Okay. Just a ghost, I could agree. Family, self, group, friends, state, country. Not the ones trying to rob me. Yeah. Are you going to quote me for that, Chris 2020? Yes, I joke, but it's actually serious. The South African-born nation makes me think of the cowboys of the Wild West. Yeah, in some respects it does. Or at least the pioneers. It makes me think more of the pioneers, less the cowboys, and more of the pioneers, the Oregon Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, things like that. People migrating west and it's building farmsteads and things like that. Jessica says needs to go on a diet. Jessica says from Dutch to Russian. Okay. A small area. Ice says, I believe the first ones from the German side of the family arrived in the USA around 1880 and 1903 in South Africa. But we had one coming to South Africa, and there were around 26 branches in the U.S. Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Some was from the first, and others from 1905. Okay. What's up, Colonel? Oh, baseborn Manjack. Okay, that's an interesting group. Just checking in. Okay, well, welcome there, Root, Jay Root. Appreciate you coming in. We've been chatting for a bit here, filling some time for people to kill some of their lockdown time. This was an impromptu live stream, or as I call it, the stray voltage. Any topic is open for discussion. If you got questions, feel free to toss it out there, and I'll try to address it and answer it as best I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll just make it up, and we'll just go with that. How's that sound? Ice says, my mom's side arrived as part of the first French Huguenots in 1688, but my dad's side, I'm only the third generation born South African, and sadly couldn't manage to keep our German passport. Yeah, the French Huguenots, de Clercq, de Villiers, all those names. Yep. South Africa's wine industry, the French. Hey, I understood that I was talking to a journalist today. For those who don't know, I was earlier today on the Center for Strategic International Studies debate talking about human rights and counterterrorism. I was there were four of us that were debate participants, 2 pro, 2 con, and I was put on the con team, which didn't necessarily reflect my views. We had to advance the position. So on that discussion, there's a journalist who's based in South Africa, works for the Institute for Strategic Studies there in Pretoria, and we were talking, and I was commenting about the wine, and she said, yeah, no, they're making money off wine. I said, what are you talking about? They blocked the transport of it. She goes, no, they lifted it last week. I didn't hear that. I didn't see that reported anywhere. If anybody knows that, please let me know. They actually, because I did a video complaining about this, the damage and the stupidity of the government banning the movement of alcohol from the vineyards to the port to put on boats or planes to ship overseas. Why weren't they doing that? That was a huge mistake. $500 million U.S. Revenue potentially lost. If markets are still open and they're still willing to buy South African wine, why would you leave it in South Africa? She said that they lifted the ban. Now, that had happened when they first imposed the lockdown, but 2 days afterwards, an urgent appeal from the wine industry and Wine Marketing Association had gotten that lifted. But when they extended the lockdown, they reimposed the ban. and I did a video at the time about South Africa's wine industry and how stupid this was. She told me that the ban has been lifted. So, if you forgot about the debate, you can go to the CSIS website. You can watch it. Honestly, I thought in the heat of doing it that I had done a poor job. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that. Did I screw up? I didn't get the points I wanted across, because you only get 7 minutes. I used 5 to keep it short, and then there was a little bit later for rebuttal and answer some questions. But altogether, I talked for maybe 8 minutes max in that hour, and I thought I didn't do the best job. But then I went back and watched the parts where I spoke, and I was like, okay, I did okay, so it's not too bad. They lifted it last week, within the last week. Okay, that's great. That's good news, because that was just a boneheaded thing. But it just shows you the ANC how stupid and incompetent, and how one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. As I said at the time, I didn't think it was malicious, but I thought it was moronic, and I'll stick to that. So they've lifted it. Hopefully they won't be that stupid again. The danger, as I mentioned in the video that I did, is that not only do you lose sales today, but you become an unreliable supplier of wine. And there's plenty of wine on the planet. People can get Argentinian wine, they can get Australian wine, but they can get Australian wine, they can get Chilean wine to make up for the loss in South African wine. Why would you jeopardize your export markets? We buy South African wine right here in Pennsylvania. And I actually had that bottle when I did that video. So if you haven't watched that video, I ask you to go watch my South African wine video. Just check the list under the South Africa playlist, and you should be able to find it. And at the time, it was accurate. But if they lifted the ban, it's no longer accurate. So that's cool. Glad to see that. Yes, I phrased it wrong. The pioneers, yep, okay. The debate, yep. Justigo says it was after your comments about the... maybe it's not just the... Okay, but I do this, those who follow my stream, I do this at great risk, great hazard. If we get disconnected now, I'm not going to come back on. But when I mention them, it seems like my connection gets cut. But I say this at great risk. So it's similar. Maybe the ANC is watching my broadcast and learning, just like the Red Ants are watching it and cutting off my cable connection. Don't cut my connection. All right. So Ranger Guy says, what was the debate topic? Was human rights and counterterrorism. And that was the topic. I was given the con position to argue that essentially that, what was the question? I think I had it written down here. But anyway, go to the CSIS website and you'll find it. You might have to look under the Africa section. Look around their menu. There's a drop down and it says Africa. Go there and they'll show the video. If I remember, I'll try to find the link and put it in this after I edit the details for this live stream when I'm done, so you guys can check it out. It was only an hour, so it's not overly burdensome thing to watch. And if you want to watch me, you can just slide along the end there and click the little spot where I speak. I think they hadn't edited the video when I looked at it earlier, because there's like 30 minutes of just dead space, and that was when we came on and did the audio and video test before. So it's not really an hour and a half long. It's exactly 1 hour. I know because the moderator cut it off at 1 hour. I was asked to speak at the end, and I spoke for about probably 90 seconds. And then he's like, well, we have a minute left. So the last two speakers, you get 30 seconds each. And I was like, ooh, I kind of felt bad. But no, they had spoke. Both of them had spoken their full 7 minutes earlier, and I had only gone for about 5 minutes. So I saved them 2 minutes. So I didn't feel too guilty. And then the other person who spoke before me only used about 3 minutes. So they both used their full time. So I didn't really feel guilty. Let's see. Denver, you were kicked. ICE says, yeah, it seems sad that many people in government don't understand exports, business, especially economy, or they just don't care. I don't know anymore. I just can't shake my head, to be honest. Well, here is my thesis on that, ICE. The bottom line is this. Tell me how many people in the government today, ministers serving under President Cyril Ramaphosa, have any genuine experience in business. Ramaphosa doesn't have much in the way of genuine experience in business. He's never built the business from the ground up. He was handed stakes in companies as part of the shakedown of the big multinationals and the old traditional South African firms, so that part of the deal with the ANC would be they wouldn't nationalize these businesses and they'd continue the business as they had in the past, as long as they gave shares and equity give that to elite black cadres who were part of the ANC so they could become enriched. And that's how Tokyo Sexwale, now he's a good businessman after the fact, and Cyril Ramaphosa became fabulously wealthy, not necessarily because of great business acumen, but because they were gifted these things. Rather than giving to all South Africans, they gave it to a few elites. There are some legitimate, Patrice Motsepe is a legitimate businessman, a billionaire who's earned his money in many respects. And I'm not saying Ramaphosa is a bad businessman, but he didn't get wealthy because he's a smart business guy, because he had an idea and he started something. He was given that head start, which no one else was given. So look at government, and you tell me how many members of the cabinets, of the minister positions, and how many members in parliament have any legitimate business experience whatsoever. They don't. I could say the same thing about a fair number of people in Congress here, but there are also a lot of legitimate business people in our Congress here. But they have no idea, no concept. We had some idiot talking yesterday about this is a person who was a spokesperson for the State Department and appears on Fox News as a paid consultant and has also worked for congressional candidates and worked for members of Congress and nothing but political experience, and previously worked for the CIA. And this person said on Fox News, I didn't see it, but I read the story afterwards, so I went back and watched it, that people are overblowing this. The impact on small and medium business is not that important. America doesn't need small businesses. Now, I'm not quoting verbatim, it's paraphrasing. Doesn't need small businesses and small medium enterprises. The lifeblood of our economy is not General Motors and Abbott Laboratories and Apple and Google. They all matter. But the lifeblood of this economy, the things that employ tens of millions of Americans, are firms with 50 or less employees. And when they fold, the economy suffers knock-on effects. The waves ripple out and it destroys the economy from within. Germany has the same situation. The bulk of jobs in Germany are not with BMW, Krupp, or Thyssen, and companies like that. They're with small businesses that have 50 or less employees. And to hear people who don't know what they're talking about say this. Now, I'm in the Army. Why should I know about this? I'm not in the Army anymore. I'm retired. But why is it that I can know about this, but these people that serve in government can't? I served in government. I knew this. But I didn't serve in a political capacity. I served in a service capacity as a soldier. So it really irritates me. And that's the situation you have in South Africa. You have people that know nothing about economics, nothing about strategic planning, no vision, no insight. They're simply reacting to what their party, Luthuli House, wants. That's what matters. And what matters for Luthuli House often is what matters for the guy in charge. And that's what matters. And that's unfortunate. Now, that's a bit unfair to the NC, but not entirely unwarranted. Their conduct and the way they've approached this have not exactly been sterling or shining examples of great governance. Their opaqueness in the face of this. I mean, seriously. I know we all love the Zoll, right? We truly love the Zoll. I play the Zoll, but I don't think it'll come over the stream because I got my microphone tuned. By the way, I plugged in my blue microphone this time to see if I got better audio because it's a really good microphone. I don't have a pop filter because I'm not speaking right into the microphone. I'm speaking over here, so you're not popping those things. I have a pop filter, but I think it's very unsexy. This is very much the Walter Winchell professional radio look here. So I like my blue microphone like that. So hopefully the sound quality is better this time, but I can't hear because I don't have the earphones in. So I've got the Zoll, but actually I could play it on here. Yeah, let me do that. Who loves the Zoll here? Let's see if I can get the Zoll going here. I know I've got that music on here. That's not it. Hang on. Somebody gave it earlier and they shared the digits for it, and this is just awesome. I absolutely love this thing. Well, that's the wrong one. I'm on the wrong one. Here we go. Sorry, I was in the wrong WhatsApp here. Someone sent this earlier. Let me see if I can play this. Oh my God, there's people are just going crazy in this group. There's way too many people in this group. All right, come on. Oh, that's not it. There it is.
When people saw and they share that soul. When people saw and they share that soul. When it comes to cigarettes, tobacco products, and related, that we should not open up the sale of products. And the reason are health related, but also when people saw, they put saliva on the paper, and then they share that soul. It means they are also share. If when people saw, they put saliva on the paper, and then they share that soul, but also they are moving saliva from one to the other.
You cannot be from South Africa and not like this.
And then they share that soul. When people saw.
Ah, this is awesome.
And then they share that soul. When it comes to cigarettes.
When it comes to cigarettes, tobacco products.
And related. That we should not open up the sale of products.
You gotta love it.
And the reason
are health related.
But also when people saw, they put saliva
Yeah, I got to thank Ronaldo for that. That's going to be a classic for all time. That's going to be like thinking back to the 80s songs years from now. That's all. That is just, in Kozazani Dolimizuma's own words, put to a wonderful club track. It's just amazing. Harold did a really great job on that. Whoever downloaded the digits for that, thank you so much. That is nothing but the coolest thing ever. Is that Ronaldo's member group on WhatsApp? Yes, that's where I got it from. And Just a Ghost loves the song. The song is just the best. It should be the AMC anthem. That is rocking. I tell you what. So I shared it with people in Botswana, and they're wetting their pants laughing. It's so funny. They get it. It's so hilarious. And one of the guys said to me, he said, "Hey, that ought to be your YouTube, on your channel." I said, "I'd love to do it, but someone else has already got it. I'm not going to copy people." But oh my gosh, yeah, the saliva. You got to love it. Yikes. So Ice says, "You're so right. Cyril has never built a business, and there are lots of records where he didn't pitch in for meetings. He would be late for board meetings, wouldn't vote." Yeah, exactly. He's just a parasite on those businesses, not an original business guy, not somebody like Elon Musk, who had an idea, came up with an idea, worked with people, created PayPal, made a fortune off of it, sold it, got $1 billion off that, moved on, created more billions with Tesla, SpaceX, brilliant business. And now I think Elon Musk has got a problem when he zulls. Famously, he was on a radio program there smoking weed, and I don't have much in the way of respect for that sort of behavior, but I'm not an old fuddy-duddy. Not a kind of cool thing. You want to take the guy seriously, and that's like Kamala Harris. Yeah, I used to listen to Ice-T when I was in college. The guy wasn't even in music back then. He was in diapers, lying. Anyway, but so Elon Musk, with real talent, and creates things, creates wealth, generates things, creates jobs by taking ideas and turning them into something. Cyril Ramaphosa never did that. He was handed stakes in companies. He was given equity. You give me $200 million in stock in Old Mutual and Anglo American, and I'll turn that into $2 billion eventually. Heck yeah. I won't lose it. That doesn't make me uniquely qualified to be a great businessman, but a lot of people were hoodwinked thinking he was. People forget that he was deputy president there for a few years, and he was also the guy responsible. He was on the board for what happened with the Platinum Company at Maracana, the shootings that took place there. Free pass. Yeah. People remember when the white minority government police would shoot people in Sharpeville, but they quickly forget about Maracana. Anyway, yeah, so Cyril is not the brilliant businessman that people claimed he was. You must have red ants with you, Just a Ghost. Yep, there are close to 28 million small businesses in the U.S. How is it that it's not the bloodline economy? Exactly right. Same in South Africa. It's the same the world over in most places. There are exceptions in economies that aren't developed, of course, but in robust, vibrant economies, even in Japan has lots of small businesses. They're all over the place. Germany, it's the lifeblood. In Germany, it's called the Mittelstand, or the Mittelstand. The Mittelstand are the businesses that are the lifeblood of German economy, and that is the case here in the United States too. So I don't get where people actually are stupid enough to say that that's not the case. Of course, in South Africa, you have the other factor too that's not made. It's a role in the U.S., but it's not a major role. But it's certainly a major role in Africa and in South Africa, and that's the informal sector and informal businesses that aren't registered as businesses, but nonetheless conduct themselves as businesses. A lot of those are 1 or 2 employees, but some of those are larger. You have people that run hair salons that aren't registered as business, and in townships and stuff like that, and they're suffering too. So anyway, let's see what else. I'm not on the group yet. I figured it would be. Oh, Ice, you were spot on. My damn phone was blowing up. I accepted it, and I had to do something, and then my phone just kept a notification. Everybody's just BSing in there, and I was like, I might drop out of the group, but at least I got the electrons for Zal song. I wanted the Zal song. I didn't know it was in there. Somebody put it there, so whoever downloaded it, thanks. Anyway, let's see. What did he pay for a bull now? Who paid for a bull? I don't know what that is. From Just a Guess. I said, so true. He just looked on when Maracana happened. Yes, that's correct. Not a peep out of him. No action as a board member for that company. They just looked the other way. Now, the striking miners were illegal. They didn't have any right to be striking, but they didn't deserve to be shot. And they were using pungas, and they were advancing on the police, but That's what clubs are for. That's what sunbucks are for. That's what shields are for. You don't have to fire weapons and kill people. The police overreacted because they were poorly trained and there was a poor response. And of course, they just made the police commander the fall guy. He bore responsibility, but the ANC should bear responsibility for Marikana in a greater degree, but they never will. And Sir Ramaphosa's conveniently forgotten about. What else? He didn't fix SAA, he didn't fix ESCOM when he was a deputy for 5 years under Zuma. Wouldn't trust him with anything. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I says, yes, and now the ANC wants to regulate all informal business to death. Yeah, exactly. They want to register them so they can try to tax them later on and register all these businesses so they can get their hands at them. Yeah. This is why if I was an informal business, I would be really nervous or reticent to sign up to have the ANC regulating my business and controlling what I'm doing. That's I don't think that's a healthy thing necessarily. But a lot of informal businesses want that money. Of course, there's also the scope for fraud, and misrepresentation. People aren't really an informal business trying to line up to the trough and like pigs and get their share. But I understand that with the economy shut down. Look, the government in South Africa and the state governments here in the U.S. have really got to get their act together. Here in Pennsylvania, for those who don't know, we've been extended till May 28th in this county of 450,000 people with just 600 cases of COVID-19 after 7 weeks of lockdown and less than 10 deaths attributed to it. And we are on lockdown until May 28th now. 1/3 of the state of Pennsylvania, 1/3 of the counties have been taken out of lockdown this week. But we have counties that have less than 30 cases of COVID-19, not too far from here to the west, that are still in lockdown. My presumption is because of the geography, they're near avenues of approach, key lines of communication, in other words, interstates or rail lines where a lot of traffic is passing through, and the state is concerned that the highway could be the means through which this could come in. But it hasn't happened in 8 weeks, 7 or 8 weeks, so what's to make them think it's going to happen now? So a lot of people in the state are quite angry at the Governor Wolf, about his decisions and what the State Department of Health has done. Now, there are certainly places in the state of Pennsylvania that it seems reasonable to continue the lockdown, like the greater Philadelphia area in the southeast corner of the state, which has Chester and Philadelphia. And if you look at the numbers, the sheer numbers, the majority of the 49,000 cases in Pennsylvania, I think it is now, are located in that band there. And then also out in the western part of the state near Pittsburgh, based along the corridor for the interstate running between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, you see a lot of cases. But the rest of the state, there are very few cases. Now, the maps you look at are very misleading. You look and you see all the red. But you see a place where a county has 6,000 COVID-19 cases and, I don't know, let's say 300 deaths. And then ours is almost the same color, and we have 600 cases, 1/10 as many, and 10 deaths. Very misleading. So there's a lot of game playing and gamesmanship going on with COVID-19. I find it very frustrating and quite annoying, to be honest, and disingenuous on the part of government and public health authorities, the way that they're addressing this, misleading people into thinking things that aren't true. We've already seen some people who don't adhere to the requirements for social distancing, although most people have been well behaved, but we have seen some people been lax on that. So anyway, so a lot of people are angry about that here, but governors need to be transparent, as does the ANC in South Africa, and SWAPO in Namibia, and the BDP, which has not got a history of being very transparent with the public. The Botswana Democratic Party is not a big fan of telling people why they do things and how to do things. They really need to change their behavior, or they'll find themselves bounced out on their ear in an election eventually. They can't rule the country forever, even though they've done a fine job for most of the history of Botswana. The ANC, by contrast, did a pretty good job for about 10 years and quite an embarrassment for the last 15 or so. But that's an opinion, and we all have them, right? So what else we got here that someone said? Ramaphosa. He just played funny money on a bull, okay? I says, don't know about the latest bill purchase, but he bought a buffalo for... Oh, okay. Bull purchase. Yeah. Yeah, but there are bulls that cost that much. I mean, if they're for breeding, and they're high quality stock, same in horses and cattle here. So when I was a kid and I was a farmer and we had livestock, you go to the fair and people presented their bulls, like the champion bull or champion sheep, champion lamb, whatever, in those classes would come through, and there'd be an auction, they'd be bought off, and people would either buy them for their breeding lines or they buy them for slaughter, because they bought the champion bull. It's kind of, car dealerships. The Ford dealership bought the Jeff Riley's champion steer, things like that. And people buy them for breeding and also for slaughter, but also for the advertising that it brings their business, showing their local support for the farming community. And I lived in a rural area, so it was important for businesses to do that sort of thing. Can't find any news on the latest purchase. You guys are all wrapped up on that bull. I don't care about Cyril Ramaphosa's bull. The bull I hear from Cyril Ramaphosa comes out of his mouth. That's the bull I care about. Anyway, just saying. But yeah, so anyway, once again, for those who are still here, just a reminder, and if you've been here all along, my apologies, but I just want to remind folks, this Friday, you see the image there, and they're wondering why that picture of Facebook's been up there for a long time now. That's Giselle. She's from Namibia. She's an Afrikaans speaker, and she's a musician who sings country music in English and Afrikaans. She did a song 3 years ago called Suidwest about Namibia, Southwest Africa. Very good video. Look it up on YouTube, and you can watch it. But she has an album that's coming out, and she was going to have a release tour, and that included travel in South Africa, Namibia, and in the States to Dallas, New York City, and a couple other locations. But that has been put on hold because of COVID-19. I know her manager and have been in contact with him. He's asked me to stream her debut concert, which she's doing from home in a studio purpose-built for the album launch in Pretoria. And so she will be streaming on my channel Friday evening, this Friday. Is it the 9th of May, I think it is, I said earlier, 7 p.m. Johannesburg time, so 1900 and 1300 or 1 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States. I'm very excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll put up an advertisement for it. I was asking her manager to give me the advertisement he wanted me to use, but I'm mentioning it in the stream so that people remember. It should be exciting and ought to be a lot of fun. So anyway, so please feel free to tune in on Friday. You won't hear me chatting or prattling away about topics, but you will have the opportunity to listen to an up-and-coming personality on the music scene in South Africa, one whom it seems like almost no South Africans know who she is. I've mentioned her a couple of times, and nobody's heard about it, which is fascinating for me. So maybe I'm in on the ground floor of the next big South African artist. We'll see. But anyway, I'm excited for her to appear on my channel. I will eventually have her manager on my channel. I'll interview him about the music industry in South Africa. The Afrikaans music industry in particular, which has been very successful and robust for a number of years now. Fascinating the number of high talented and quality Afrikaans musicians across the spectrum, from country music to pop to what we call Heimat music in Germany, and it's just, and even rap. Artists like Snotkop, who perform sort of a rap approach to it. But anyway, yeah, so Giselle will be on my channel Friday evening. It should be interesting. And so ICE says, let's see what else we got here. We got Justigo says, this, I think it was 50K last month. You guys are still on that bull thing. Okay. I was trying to get off the bull thing. You guys are still on it. Let's see if I got anything over here I brought up from the last time. Oh, yeah. So once again, let me bring this issue up and talk about this. On Saturday, I did a live stream with Evans Larby. Evans Larby is a commercial farmer, small-scale commercial farmer based in Ghana. He's a Ghanaian citizen. His mother's from Kenya, but his father's Ghanaian. He grew up in Ghana. And so he's a small-scale farmer, been in farming for about 10 years, owns some farmland, but has to lease the balance of the farmland. And we talked about farming in Ghana, in West Africa in general, government support, vocational training, educational training through university for those interested in farming, inputs, credit challenges, land tenure, which is a big issue, and that is directly applicable to the issue in South Africa. But people don't realize that in much of Africa, land tenure is not clear for most people. South Africa actually has clear land tenure. It's just a question of what games the ANC is playing right now to try to retain popular support from a populist standpoint with his expropriation approach. But Evans is an interesting person. A number of people who were into my stream on Saturday have already been in contact with him, and those who've watched the video after the fact. It's only an hour and 20 minutes. So you don't have to listen to all of it, but I recommend that you take a look at it, especially learn something about a place that's not South Africa. If you're from South Africa, you'll see some parallels when it comes to the challenges from the farming community. And so Evans, interesting conversation, interesting dialogue. And a number of folks who were on my stream, South Africans and others, particularly those from West Africa as well, have already been in contact with Evans after the live stream. So it's fascinating. A couple of people on my stream told me that. And so I reached out to him. I said, yeah, did so-and-so contact you? He goes, yeah, no. And this person and that person. And I'm like, why? He said, well, they watched the stream. I'm like, fantastic. So maybe there'll be an opportunity for assisting or investing or at least providing advice for Evans and working together. Ghana has a very friendly business environment right now and is on a good path economically, aside from incurring more debt. That's not a healthy development. But other than that, they're doing quite well. And there's a lot of opportunity there from a business standpoint, particularly for South Africans who are being discriminated against in South Africa from investing, doing contracts and tenders with the government, and then, of course, the knock-on effect from the large businesses that are desperate to be considered compliant with BEE for their subcontractors. So there are other opportunities in Africa, so you might take a look at that. Anyway, yeah, I'm an Afrikaner, so farming is in my blood. Well, there you go, Just a Ghost. You might want to watch my video. Just check it out. It's under the live stream, and it's about farming in Ghana with Evans Larby. Interesting fellow. It worked out pretty well. When I did my first stream with a guest, my guest, we couldn't get his Skype to work so you could watch the video. Very frustrating. But when I had Evans come on, his Skype worked fine. So I don't know if I figured out the Skype or just got lucky there. But whatever the case is, Evans came on. It was a great experience. It went really, really well, I thought. And I got a lot of good feedback from it. So if you're interested in farming, check it out. It should be an interesting thing to listen to. Well, folks, I've gone for 3 hours and 13 minutes. Who wants me to stay longer and who wants me to go? If you want me to stay longer, say yes, stay longer. I'm going to have another sip of my Starbucks here. And we can talk about some other things. 10:10's taking off. Yeah, early morning tomorrow. I think probably all of us probably ought to take a break here. It's been a long 3 hours. So, yeah, let me just do that. I didn't ask. I gave you a chance to respond, but then I'm going to cut it off. So, listen, okay, I says I would love to farm, but not in South Africa. Luckily, my mom's brother took over the family farm and not my mom. Listen, guys, if you want to farm, more power to you. The world needs quality farmers, but I've been a farmer. I've been down that road. I was a dairy farmer, and that is a 365-day-a-year job, twice a day, milking cows. No vacations, no holidays. Whether you want to get up or not, if you're sick, you got to be there milking those cows. You set the hours, but I milk the cows every morning at 5 o'clock and every evening at 5:30. Milking a cow at 5 o'clock meant I was up at 4:30. Yeah, you can have it, folks. Now, you can be up at 4:30 if your day ends at 2 o'clock, but if you got to go back and milk cows at 5:30, and then you got to take the milk, you got to clean it, you got to process it, you got to filter it, you got to clean out the milk equipment, you got to feed the cattle. You're not getting to bed to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Where's your day go? That's not a lot of fun. Now, that's dairy farming, but all other kinds of farming take a lot of time. All right. Well, okay, Ice is taking off too. Hey, folks, thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm going to put my little theme music back on just as a wrap up to get out of here. So I'm going to thank you all for tuning in to my Stray Voltage live stream here, which was an impromptu one, as some of us shifted from Ronaldo Ho's stream to Germ Warfare stream to my stream 15 minutes later. So thank you all for tuning in. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the sound quality was better this time. I'm going to listen to it after the fact and see if that is the case. I think it will be the case. Thank you for tuning in. Those of you who are on here, I think, are all subscribed. But if you're not a subscriber, please feel free to push that little button down there, subscribe to my channel. Make sure that you push the bell icon to get notifications when I have streams and videos uploaded or I premiere a new video. And I ask that you give me a like. A lot of time on here, I could have eaten, could have watched some good stuff like Bosch, but I hung out with you guys and shared some of my experiences, a little bit about myself, and listened to your questions and answered them. So if you've enjoyed the stream, please give me a like. I appreciate that. The more likes you get as a percentage of viewers, the more likely it is that YouTube will post your video so that others will follow your channel. And so with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in. It's been 3 hours and 15 minutes. For me, it's been a wonderful 3 hours. I hope you've enjoyed it. No rugby jersey today, but a South Africa shirt nonetheless with the Ushaka theme park from Durban. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. This has been Chris. Have a safe evening. Get some sleep for those of you in South Africa. Here in the States, enjoy your dinner and watch some good TV or read a good book tonight. You all take care. We'll catch you next